It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Friday, October 31st, 2025. Thank you for joining me today. Was going over quite a lot today to organize, and there's been one topic that I've been putting aside quite a lot about DHS and ICE, in particular around U.S. deportation, U.S. U.S. citizens being detained, and just planning on making a focus. And for some reason today, it just kind of came together. And I think it's really, and we've been making a focus about this for a long time, since Donald Trump, 5-6 times. How we don't look at that as deliberate is beyond me. Floating very clearly in different interviews with different platforms that U.S. citizens could be next. It could very well be that that was meant just to put us in our place, never with the intention to do that, even though it's already happened. And there's a case that happened over the last couple of weeks that even though a judge has ruled that they are legally a U.S. citizen and should not have been removed, hey, all right. Looks like we're back. Guess we're going to have to talk about the ridiculous amount of how often it seems that the direct connection to computer 1 gig connection drops off all the time lately, seemingly more in the morning when I'm on with Steve, but all day today. Anyway, let's keep going. I see one thing I worry about when that happens is, well, one, I don't know where I left off, but two, it used to have a very weird effect on YouTube where it would split the video in half and start a whole new stream. I certainly hope that doesn't happen anymore. Regardless, I don't even have to care that much these days about the platform stuff. Just put it out wherever I can, put it on our, hopefully you go to the Last American Vagabond over anything else. Now, I'm giving everyone just kind of a second to get caught up and refreshed or whatever else. The point was we've been focusing on U.S. citizens being detained, being deported, and so on. And the conversation of how that was floated and whether that was meant, that U.S. citizens were next, or it was more of a threat meant to scare. The point is that we've seen that. We've seen a U.S. citizen who has now been deported to Laos. We'll talk about that today. Children have been deported that citizens that are U.S. citizens and were deported. But today, or rather, it could have been yesterday, Cristian said very forcefully that we have not, of course, the typical way that they sort of clutch their pearls and push back in this righteous indignation about how, even though we do know the media, corporate media, alternative media, very much lie to you on a regular basis. The point, though, is that she comes out and goes, we know that's fake news and we all know. And it's easy to go, well, yeah, we do know that, but that is not a part of that. What they're pointing to, that U.S. citizens have been detained and deported, is very real. And probably one of the easiest parts of the conversation to prove, not from the endless amounts of documented videos and court cases that you can look to, but just from their own admissions, from people who are there going, I'm a U.S. citizen. I was literally detained for 2 weeks, or a U.S. veteran, Mr. I think it's Reedus, who is a U.S. veteran. And there's many cases we'll go over today, and a U.S. citizen, and is detained, held, in a way, tortured. He is angry that it's happening. He's pushing back and verbally, and they make him stay in a cell for weeks. He never committed a crime. They never charged him with a crime, but they claimed he was being forceful or violent. And that's why and we're going to get into the false claims that are almost regularly put out by DHS, seemingly promoted by the administration to say, just lie about whatever happens. And I'm not saying that's exactly what's being stated, but we will go over the endless amount of times that they've been caught blatantly making up things to hide their actions, saying they were hit by a car and then having to admit that it didn't happen, claiming they were punched or aggravated, and over, this is false. Now, for example, when Chris Murphy comes out and says they're doing that, Doesn't mean it's false because he says it. They are doing that. I can prove that to you. Chris Murphy clearly just has an interest in using that to make himself look like he's on that side. Clearly, I don't think he's part of the, I don't think any of the people in Congress are necessarily there to try to fight for you. At least you should be questioning that. The point is that just because the other side comes out and goes, the thing they're saying is true, or the thing they're denying is true, don't get lost in the partisan game of all this. It's so easy to fall into your side and start pushing back. The reality is your government is using that every single day to convince you to ignore your own rights, convince you to call for your own subjugation. It's just never been more clear than today. What we're going to focus on entirely today, save for a few opening points that still very much connect to the large point of ICE, DHS, as well as the connective point at the end of Venezuela, Tren de Aragua, and what they're doing around the world, which comes together as well. Really, I thought about titling today sort of how where ICE, DHS, Venezuela, and Israel sort of come together in one very obvious agenda. It's pretty damn alarming. We've gone over the ICE use of Israel tech that they're using on Palestinians now being applied to Americans, the surveillance of all of that and what that's being used for. We get into a different show. It's incredible. But again, the focal point being just apparently you, the U.S. citizens out there, myself included, who are there's multiple ways to look at it. One, just bluntly, that you are being taken advantage of, either because the DHS or the current government administration or the U.S. government at large doesn't care that you're being caught in what they're trying to do, and maybe just a byproduct showing you how little they care about your rights, maybe because they're creating a situation to be able to ignore your rights for further precedent. There's a lot of ways you can look at it, but just understand that Americans are being detained. Americans' rights are being ignored, as well as illegal immigrants being arrested. But what you'll find very clearly is that most of this seems tailored around not the rapist, murdering, criminal, Tren de Aragua war, not even close. Almost predominantly people that are just caught in the way, maybe with the wrong skin color, wrong place, wrong time, people with real IDs being ignored because that's fake. There's lawlessness overtaking everything. And we'll go over how that very clearly is connected to all these other stories, but the focal point being primarily on how that's being lied about, what that means for our future, and what we need to do to push back against this, and how using our very political momentum, not illegal, but just going, we need to do something about that, then being framed as the radical pushback from whatever side they want to take advantage of at that moment. And then all of a sudden we can't even speak out without being called a terrorist. And that's exactly where this is all going. But let's start with a few opening points and try to get my attention if this goes out again. Mods in the chat, let me know if you can. I mean, it's frustrating. I can be live and I won't know if I lose connection because I won't be looking at the StreamYard screen, but please let me know. So let's start with a couple of points. Now, this could be a good news point. There's two things in the beginning here I just want to include. One that will end up playing that video again. You probably have seen more than once, but you'll see why it's important. But just to start, and even that does very much connect with the surveillance, DHS, ICE overlap to all of this. But this one is just a one point about RFK doing the MMR. I just want to include it today because I'll probably lose it and everything in the next couple of days. It's interesting because it is a good point in a way. I mean, I'll frame it this way. He's addressing whether they're going to split the MMR shot into 3 shots. Now, that has long since been acknowledged. He has been fighting RFK for this for a long time, not just to split them into 3, but acknowledge that they're probably dangerous in their own right, but recognize that together they're untested, and that's a huge issue. He has been screaming about that forever. So the way he says this, I'm kind of unhappy about the middle of the road answer, but nonetheless, just having the conversation of whether they should be split up is a small win, but a win. And that's not to say because of what they're doing, it feels like they're almost dragging their feet and getting it done. But you know my opinion about politics and politicians. I'm not going to go, yay, fight for you. I'm going to fight for the outcome, for the principle. And if he's doing this, good on him. I just think it's important not to just give the credit unless it's, especially since we've already seen things like this that we've covered already. His very weird, and I mean, it's not just, if you're being honest about it, as I wrote, his shocking MMR hit vaccine hypocrisy. And if you guys know, if you watch the show, if you watch his statements on MMR, it's insulting if you're being honest about it. But maybe he's playing the game. Sure. That's certainly possible. I'm still insulted by it. But here is what he recently said when asked. This is Larry Cook just saying Wakefield was right, from Vax, Andrew Wakefield, because he was. And so was RFK Jr. So was Del Bigtree, because they were involved in that large push. It's just what RFK's done since being in this administration that seems to change everything for people that seem to be paying attention. But just this clip very quick.
The president has asked to break up the MMR vaccine into 3 separate shots. Is that something you're going to direct ASAP to consider or take action on?
We're looking at the feasibility of that now.
The feasibility? You know, like, hey, maybe that's just the way he's answering to make sure they don't jump down his throat. I can understand that even, but the feasibility, like whether it's financially possible, we just go, hey, it's killing people. Let's stop that. It's dangerous. Let's not put things, you get the point. But I'm glad it's being discussed. Now, again, last point, whether, Trump saying that, it's same kind of thing. People go, yay, see, Trump's our guy. He's on our side. Well, Trump has clearly shown you throughout his history, so too is every politician, Biden, Obama, Bush, that they will say what you want to hear. Now, when he's acting like he's the one just going, hey, why don't we do that good idea? And then the onus is on everybody else. He's the one that's in charge. So even if it's RFK who should be the one doing it, it's still Trump who's the one that should be. He's responsible. It's the weirdest thing I've seen is we have a leader today, and I would do quotes around any of them, by the way, who wants to stand there and act like he's sort of not responsible for all these actions, but then take the credit for everything that goes the way he says it does. That's not a leader, guys. That's someone who's taking advantage and then standing back and letting you own things when it's, that's just not good leadership, in my opinion. But the point overall, I don't think it'll happen. And if it does split up, is it any better? I mean, it's better that they're not together because they weren't tested alongside each other, but is it just a slower version of the same problem? I know people don't want to get into the vaccine conversation who are sort of acting like this is beyond us now. It's not. It's still a very prominent one, and it will come back around, especially with the technology overlap. But just want to point it out. Well, we, as always, for those that may not watch this show all the way through or in depth, they just read the headline and act like that's everything I talk about. We will go through this stuff always, and I am keeping up on all of these things. It would blow your mind the amount of files and categories and tabs and folders I have of any COVID stuff or whatever else that I still keep aside, and I keep, just for me, I have to decide what's most important every day. Now, this is obviously a major story, but it's where this goes going forward. But I'll keep you apprised on it as best I can. If you see something, let us know. And again, like I said, I'll include this episode as well as another link to it. That's that conversation. Now, one last thing to start about surveillance, and this, I could have put this at the end, but I just didn't want this to get missed because of how crazy this is, this statement, and how many times we've talked about this. Because surveillance overlaps with this conversation today when we come to the overlap of Israel tech being used on Americans through ICE. So I'll bring this back up at the end. But the point is to not miss this. Mohammed Shihada put this out. Israel's ex-Mossad chief, this is the very guy that was involved with the transferring of money through Qatar to Hamas, brags that they have spread, and I'll play it for you, booby-trapped and manipulated equipment like Hezbollah's pagers in, quote, all countries you can imagine. I mean, I almost fell out of my chair. I'm like, is that deep fake? Like, this is exactly what we were telling you. And I mean, look, anybody who's not completely brain dead can recognize what that's supposed to mean and what absolutely represents whether he intends it to mean that or not. And this is, and Muhammad writes, how is this rogue state behavior so normalized and tolerated that this criminal admission of perfidy does not make a single headline? It's a very good point. Now check this out.
Surprises in Gaza.
Surprises?
Yeah.
You mean intelligence surprises?
Pages, walkie-talkies. Do you know how many treated equipment do we have in these countries? You don't. I do.
You mean you mean booby-trapped equipment?
Not only booby-trapped.
And spying?
Manipulated equipment. All right?
In which countries are you talking about?
All the countries that you can imagine.
And not Gaza?
Not Gaza.
Nothing
enough.
in Gaza at all.
Did you see that? If we had it, I mean, we knew something about them coming. Something, right?
Now, let's not forget that they did, and we know that, and everyone in the world knows that outside of this weird circle of amnesia and just blatant dishonesty, that very clearly there was a lot going on they knew about. This is them acting like somehow because we weren't allowed to be in Gaza, even though we know that that was not the case and it was still occupied, that they act like that's why, almost as if to rationalize why they need tech infiltration all around the world to keep everybody safe except the ones they don't like until that becomes you. And the reality is that's only them in their minds. And I'm talking about Israeli Zionists.
Right. Would have sold them everything. Just everything. I mean, you can't imagine the quantity.
Sorry to stop one more time. What he just said there is like, had they let us in Gaza, you mean Hamas, we would have sold them everything. Acting almost like that would have been their benefit. But you realize his point is that way we would have had infiltrated technology in their hands. So you see how double-edged sword everything Israel Zionists do is? That's a weird way to say that. The truth is clearly, he's basically selling it as like, look, like this is good. If they would have had this in there, they could have helped them. Like they're all, but at the end of the day, if you watch the full conversation, rather, at the end of the day, the point is simply that if they had it, they would have been able to manipulate them, but they didn't. But we know he's lying about the core point because they always have been. So it's just like this weird double-edged argument to make the case for why it's in our benefit, I guess, that should be everywhere. But at the same time, he admits that it's literally everywhere. Watch.
When I have invented that method, that was in 2002 to 2004.
The pager method.
The manipulated equipment method.
Okay, so that's important because he just made it clear that they're on the same page. The pager, meaning the pagers, in case you don't know the story, where they put explosives inside of pagers that they let circulate for years. They say it's 10, it's disputed, but years throughout Lebanon. 75% women and children are the ones that got hurt by that. That's a terrorist attack the most obvious terrorist attack I've ever seen in my life. Even with everything else we know in history, I've never seen a more blatant example of almost guaranteeing that it will hurt innocent people. And that's what they're talking about. So he's saying that that's the manipulated technology, making it clear, oh no, it's not just pagers, right? It's equipment. It's technology. It's everything.
And then 2 to 2004.
The pager method.
The manipulated equipment method. Okay? We have already used it. Manipulated equipment in Second Lebanon War. Some of the elements were speaking to us.
How did you use it?
Want a glass of water?
We can get some brandy.
He can tell you, but he doesn't.
I know it's an early morning in London. I mean, I don't think that is the case. But
You mean intelligence surprise?
Pages, walkie-talkies. Do you know how many treated equipment do we have in these countries? You don't. I do.
You mean you mean booby-trapped equipment?
Not only booby-trapped.
And spying.
Manipulated equipment. All right?
In which countries are you talking about?
All the countries that you can imagine.
All countries that you can imagine. But weirdly, not Gaza, though. Like, what a ridiculous statement to make, though. He's just trying to make it sound like that's why we weren't able to stop them. That's insane. I mean, you're going to tell me that you're able to work it into literally every country in the world, including countries that are your adversaries, but not the one you control that's right in front of you. It's just, they don't seem to think these things through, or they just think you're too dumb to catch on. That's how I read that. Either way, what he just said was they have technology like the pager attack in every single country you can imagine. Of course, he could be blustering, he could be lying, but I think we kind of know it's not true. Like, and what I said, watch these along each. Wait, that was the other one. I moved that toward the end. I'll set it up. I'll read it to you. But I threw this to the end to make this connected with the last point. We'll get to it at the end. But I said, watch these alongside each other. I'm going to play this for you next. Again, since you've seen it many times, this is an open admission that something like the pager attack in Lebanon is potentially primed in every other country. And Israel has more than made it clear that there is no line they will not cross. Add something more to the Samson option, doesn't it? So, oh, I thought that's weird. Oh, I think it's right here. Hold on. Yeah, my point on this I thought was important, where I said this is likely what many politicians uncomfortably know all too well. Now, really think about that. Like in American politician context, or rather just any government out there that we might argue is somehow compromised by Israel. Imagine if you thought, or you knew, but didn't know exactly how, that this government had planted random explosives and electronics and equipment all throughout your life, and you have no idea how to find that or detect it or even know for sure. What would you do? How would you conduct your political life when they send subtle messages, sort of like, I continue saying Epstein was only one part of an ongoing operation, right? If blackmail fails, it becomes direct threats. And this is how I see it, like you all have a piece of Israel in your pockets. Remember that? That was very recent. When they were in Israel, 50 states won Israel, and Netanyahu literally looked at all these 250 U.S. politicians and said, out of nowhere, because it didn't seem to have any connection to the conversation, you all have, cell phones in Israel. You all have a piece of Israel in your pockets. Now, I could be wrong. I very much feel that is them saying this. Why do you think this is being so bandied about? I think it's important. I think they're desperate, and I think this is the effort to say, we have this option, a mini Samson option that we could use anywhere. Now, this is completely my opinion. But when you recognize that he is literally telling you that they have it everywhere in the world, with this clip I'll play next, which you've seen, yeah, it very well could be real, or could that be them trying to make you be outsized, overly concerned about things they want you to think they can do, but can't. Look, with what we've seen them do, how do we not consider this? So if you haven't seen this, this might expand this quite a bit more for you with what he's saying. Equipment, every country in the world. Then ask yourself how they might use that to, manipulate supply chains, force governments to do what they don't want them, or what they want them to do, but maybe they don't want to do.
How did you convince Hezbollah to buy this?
Well, obviously.
Sorry, the thing, what he just said, remember the pagers, the equipment, right? So she's starting by saying, how did you convince them to buy those things from you? So consider what Cohen or the Mossad agent just said, ex-Mossad, in comparison to what he just said, but just placing that point and, how did they get him in front of you, right? It's not like you go out and buy it from some Israel IDF store. These are things that you get through other channels that you don't even recognize might have a connection to what this is.
They didn't know that.
To buy this.
Well, obviously, they didn't know that they were buying it from Israel.
Who did they buy it from, or think they were buying it from?
We have an incredible array of possibilities of creating foreign companies that have no way being traced back to Israel, shell companies over shell companies who affect the supply chain to our favor. We create a pretend world. We are a global production company. We write the screenplay. We're the directors, we're the producers, we're the main actors. The world is our stage.
Imagine literally saying that the world is our stage, that we are the actors, we see the world as our stage to direct as we see fit, that we use fake companies in these countries to literally affect the supply chain. Imagine publicly saying that as an IDF representative in an interview set up by Israel, and then have the ex-Mossad agent going around saying we have those things in literally every country in the world. How in the world are we not? I mean, this is the point, guys. This explains itself. This is there and not being done, and no one's doing anything about it because they are either lying about this, and this is a small part of a larger agenda we don't understand, or this is Israel threatening everybody to fall in line. That's how I would read it, but that's just a couple of ways you could look at this. But this is just so over the top. So think about all that. We'll come back to that at the end, but just how wild it is that it's being, at the very least, I think that's them floating a threat to people in the world. And I think more in particular to people that know that that is the thing, like the politicians that know, like the further extension of the Epstein kind of, what I mean is that that's a blackmail operation, right? Meant to coerce politicians. Well, if that doesn't work, or it's not enough, or maybe they don't have any blackmail because they're not as bad as everybody else, that's the avenue. That's how I would read that. Keep that in mind. So, getting into a few other points. Here's an interesting overlap. Now, there's just two more things we're going to get into. And then basically, I want to start with a new report coming out about Trump being allowed to deport immigrants from Fox News, which is very inaccurate. Some of it's slightly accurate. There's one point that's right about it, but I want to start with the new thing that people are pointing to claim that he can just deport whoever he wants. How they tend to misrepresent these, and then we'll roll into the larger immigration point, which will be the rest of the show. Now, this is important for two reasons. The overlap of the politicians like Massey, who at the very least are projecting the actual America First tenets. And I only say that to be objective because I don't know. I'm very skeptical about all politicians. Massey's been consistently principled with his actions for a while now. And that's, I will point that out. Rand Paul, a little less so, but still more than most everybody else. That's my opinion completely. Maybe you disagree. Now, Captive Dreamer posts this. JD Vance on Thomas Massey. He says, having your own opinions. I think this is the one. Yeah, I'll play it. I wasn't sure if I grabbed the video. Here it is. Here's that.
Having your own opinions is one thing. Having your own
It's a little low. So having your own opinions is one thing, is how it starts.
Opinions is one thing. Voting against the party on every single issue, you're eventually going to make too many enemies. And that
interesting. Right? Okay. Voting
having your own opinions is one thing.
Is one thing. So it's okay to have your own opinions. Like even the way he starts, like it's okay, but you're right there. Kind of having your own opinions, it's fine, but the old saying, everything before the word but, it's like, what do you mean having your own opinions? Like that's some kind of like a detestable thing. Well, it is to them, you understand. Team sport politics wins the day for all mainstream politics. That's how they've I think that stems from what Israel's done to this country, but you can push that aside and still recognize them, to my opinion. You can still recognize that team sport politics is how they operate these things. But having your own opinion, but voting against having your own opinion in one way is okay. But having your own opinion everywhere, now, that's just going to cause too many enemies. How dare you stand by principle? What if, I'm not saying you can prove that. Maybe Massey just does this because he thinks it's going to work for him. Opportunism. That's certainly possible. But you don't know that. And if you look at his actions, they're literally in line with what America First should be, and they're not. So it's kind of hard to see this as any other thing than them trying to downplay the one person who's making them all look like frauds, right? So the idea that you're making too many enemies, well, God forbid that you make enemies in a situation where everybody, you see how dumb this becomes? This is them going fall in line to dumb people, to people out there that don't understand the nuance of your own opinion, but think that the only way politics works is to team up against the bad guy Democrats. It's the team thing. Like, it's very low on the idea of intelligence, like the idea that the only way you can achieve anything is to have the team fight the other side. Like, think about everything boiled down to that. And that is how people view politics today because of Trump forward, in my opinion, not because of Trump the person. Did have a major effect on it, but because there was a moment where we shifted into everyone versus everyone. It wasn't that we just were all Americans and had different opinions. It was that we were fighting the other side of America. Now, who do you think is benefiting from something like that?
Voting against the party on every single issue.
Voting against the party on every single issue. Okay, so that means party matters more than personal opinion. Well, we all know that. They don't want to admit that, but that's what he's saying. Now, what's more interesting before we keep going is to recognize that Massey, thank you to Felonious Mike, turns out has a 91% GOP platform alignment. Okay, make sense of this for me. So people that they support are way down on this list. Think about somebody like Lindsey Graham. It's insane. So Thomas Massey is he's number 37. 91%. So here is Vance trying to tell you that he's voting against almost every time he's voting against almost every time the Trump agenda. If you're really trying to align this with GOP, or even more so America First, he knocks them all out of the park. So it's really insulting to see this. And as I said, it's so very easy to see who's presenting, the America First values. I said it like that for a reason, not necessarily that they are, but they're presenting them, and who is not. It's very simple. You're not stupid. You know what you think these things mean, not Trump first, but America first. This is team sport politics and nothing more. Stop falling for it.
Eventually going to make too many enemies. And that is the problem that Thomas has had. It's not one issue. It's not 3 or 4 issues. It's that every time that we've needed Thomas for a vote, he's been completely unwilling to provide it.
Okay. Think about it. We said that. Every time we've needed Thomas for a vote, he's been unwilling to provide it, as if it's just a commodity to be sold to the team. It's like, I don't even think that they actually understand how clearly this is laying out what I'm saying. It's just because they've so far, I mean, maybe even Vance has absorbed to his identity so much what this is that he doesn't even recognize it. He's simply telling you that he didn't join with us when we needed his vote. What do you mean he didn't ignore his own opinion when you needed him to side with you? Because you've realized every one of these votes, Thomas lays out his opinion and says why he thinks that's contradictory. No, you can't bomb those votes. No, you can't shut this. No, Epstein, or yes, the Epstein list should be released, or any number of votes, like the shutdown, for example. He made his case for why he thought what they were doing was wrong. You can disagree with him, but it's not like he's going, screw Trump, I'm a Democrat. These people are children, because that's how they see you. Now, maybe they don't act mentally, or maybe they're not actually there, but they think you are. To some people, it's true. But so they dumb it down. They make this about left versus right, team sport, one side versus the other, one team against the other, one idea against the other. It's just binary and simple and not the honest picture. And you guys know this. I mean, if you're hearing this chat, you probably already know that. The sad reality is the people that need to hear that and recognize that, or maybe actually might, move the needle a little bit if we don't even exist. Despite being somewhat prominent, some reach out there. There's people out there that have no clue we're even there. We can put out content with information like the title, for example, of something, the way we frame it, or the conversation we're having that is so far ahead of the general news story that 2 weeks later, these things get discussed. And yet for some weird reason, we're not even in the algorithm. We don't get picked out and pointed out as somebody going, look at the thing. It just doesn't happen. There's a lot of us in that field, by the way. So just remember, Thomas Massey, 91% GOP, and they want you to believe he's voting against the team. Well, he is, if you think the team is only what their agenda is, which is very much not America first. Thomas Massey says, when leaders of my own party protect sex traffickers, spend our grandkids into oblivion, right, and fund endless wars, I oppose them. What was all the things that Trump and Musk were all saying now that Musk has just kind of stepped aside? They were going after the pedophiles, not spending more, smaller government, no wars. Funny how literally every one of those things is the opposite, and he's the bad guy. I won't be a yes man, he says, and this infuriates them. They want to silence me to take away your voice in DC. Now, I caution you, as much as I want to believe in somebody like this, be careful and just watch for outcome. So far, he's been proving himself. But don't get lost. It's easy to want to believe when somebody like a Gabbard, for example. There was a long time where I'm going, she's showing it. She's standing by it. Look at her today. Now, Massey says, not a hoax. I'll talk about this in the next show around Epstein files. Release the files. He writes, investigate. Sorry, I'm not going along to get along. This is what they hate about him. New York Times, JP Morgan alerted U.S. to Epstein transfers involving Wall Street figures that they did nothing about. Where did $1 billion go? We'll touch on this in the next show. This is what they hate. Trump doesn't want him talking about that. Now, a living woman responds to my post about Massey or Vance, saying, according to Vance's way of thinking, only 2 representatives, 1 from each party, are needed, since having a differing opinion among the group isn't permitted. And this is, I'm a Republican, from what I can see. And the point is simply that people are just like, look, you can't just keep categorizing us in one side versus the other. We're not that stupid. I believe that. I really do. And we need to start having more faith in left and right, and American people in general, and human species in general. And lastly, on this point, I just think it's funny. So he's out there trying to make it about our team and their team. You have to realize, guys, that's not even the majority of people, right? The people involved in mainstream politics and left-right politics are not the majority of the country. Every single election, it's 40-something% of the people. That's not the majority. The majority of people aren't even taking part in this because I think, my opinion, they recognize over a long period of time how completely broken this is. Some of them don't care because of apathetic, whatever, they've driven that way. But the reality is that these people are not either side of them are not the rebels fighting the deep state. And this is what they're trying to convince you. Here's Benny. Can you believe this? He goes, these are the rebels. This is the energy of Gen Z and Gen Alpha. They love America. And what's funny is all these things about the left are all these old people. It's the same thing. Left and right. It's all, but realistically, the majority of them are older people because kids are waking up to this. But the point is, we're so screaming America flags. We love Trump. It's all Trump first, red hat. It's all it is. They're all going around. We're all, which is really not even that big of a crowd. It's just funny. But the point is, the rebels. And I said, nope, you're very much the mainstream, just in general. Simply LARPing as the rebels fighting the deep state. I get the sense you already know that, though. But think about framing the mainstream Republican side of the conversation as the rebels, or the mainstream left as the rebels. You see how funny that's become? How it's these people have, in a very effective way, kind of rolled this the awareness growing right back into the system. That is how this works every single time. Now, here's an important point about this that I've been trying to get people to see. Same conversation, same speech. Of course, Nick Sorder's going, yay, the thing he just said. JD Vance says, we cannot be afraid to do something because the left might do it in the future. The left is going to do it regardless if we do it. So basically saying, let's not worry about doing the thing that gives the left more power. So the next left president comes, he's speaking to the point we'll get to toward the end around bombing ships in Venezuela or anything for that matter. The logical point is the next president, a left president possibly, will have the same power. Of course that's relevant. His point is, they're going to do it anyway. So just cheer on us doing the wrong thing because they'll do it first. It's preemptive self-defense against the Democrats. I mean, these people are getting how would you describe that? Because that's something they've been using that's flimsy in foreign policy, but now it's come home. And of course, Nick Sorder goes, that's exactly right. Democrats never play by the rules, so why should we? I mean, guys, they couldn't have written this to more exactly what I make fun of and point out. But yet literally saying it out loud. We shouldn't follow the rules because they don't. I mean, this is literally kindergarten level logic. And it also, by the way, Nick, makes you just as bad, just as illegal, just as unconstitutional, just as un-American, because you're doing the exact same thing. How is that hard to understand? I simply wrote the quiet part out loud. Guys, this is exactly what I'm trying to get people to see. Even if that's the correct point, even if the Democrats will, the point is, aren't you the ones trying to fight against that? So your argument is become the deep state to stop the deep state? Well, suddenly that sounds exactly like what Mark Andreessen and Thiel and Karp and everyone else is pushing, that we need the good oligarchy to fight the bad. Yep, because that's exactly what they're doing. And none of them are good. They just want to control your life. I wrote they're exactly like the other side they so loathe, as many have been demonstrating. This is the gov, all of it, trying to get us to call for our own subjugation. We cannot be this easy to manipulate. It's infuriating how clear that is. And there's so many young kids in the generation that are falling for it. Again, I don't believe it's the majority, but 2% of all the people in this country is a ton of people. And if you frame that as everybody, it's hard to see the difference. And of course, MAGA supporter, any number of these things, or red wave press. What if, ask the question, what if a complete tyrant gets into office, the kid asked, and abuses the use of the deployment of National Guard? Here's exactly what he said. Here's something I want every conservative to remember. I think I've actually got it right here.
So here's something that I want conservatives, I want every conservative to remember. It's an important part of my entire political philosophy is we cannot be afraid to do something because the left might do it in the future. The left is already going to do it regardless of whether we do it.
Oh, right. Okay, because that's logic. A blind assumptive point about what you believe the entire left of the country will do collectively, I guess, or maybe just the team sport Democrats on the political side, because for a fact that you'll do something in the future. You must be psychic. Now, look, I'm obviously of the mind that both sides will do these things. But isn't that the point I'm making? So all he's doing is going to allow us to do it because the government wants to do it. We'll get you one side or the other. We'll rationalize against the other side and get you to call for the thing that in other cases you wouldn't want. Surveillance, lack of rights, invasive policies, right? I mean, everything we've always talked, but one side blames the other and then they rush it in. And the other side goes, yay, because them. The same thing the left would do during COVID. I mean, you could make these points endlessly. I just don't know why any American is this easy to manipulate. You get it. I mean, it's just the same point over and over with these guys. But the sad reality is some are falling for it. And again, this guy says, boom. He says, that's the takeaway of the last 40 years. Right. The takeaway that we should do it first. I mean, I'm just completely sometimes these are the moments where you're going like, okay, like I very much hope that's not the majority then, because otherwise, why am I doing this? But I would anyway, as you know me. But the point is that it's just that I can't believe that. Because, I mean, honestly, why would they constantly be trying to convince us of these things if the majority already believe them? It doesn't make much sense. But here's an important point to get to immigration. Now, right now, they're using this story more than anything, or using the immigration overlap, even if it's exactly what you think it is, to do things that are not, that are illegal, that are unconstitutional, that should not be allowed in this country, even if everything they're saying is true, everything like that, everything I just said still applies. And that should matter to people who care about the foundational aspects of this country. And you shouldn't just be easy enough to say, but the other side, therefore we should ignore it right now. It's always the same kind of thing. Now, I want to play for you this quick clip about them discussing on Fox News. And of course, it's always the right way to do it, to bring on the press secretary to discuss the new thing, because it's not like you'll get, if you want to find out the reality of something, you don't bring on one of the sides to tell you their perspective, because they're going to give you exactly what they want you to hear. But that's what CNN and Fox do. They're propaganda platforms. But the point is they're discussing a change in Supreme Court rulings. Now, I'll tell you right out of the gate, the way they're doing this is like taking 3% of the reporting and telling you that represents the entire story. What he's saying in here is false. But there's a part of it that does change in regard to specifically Tren de Aragua, but I'll let it speak for itself. And I want you to recognize how often both sides of the paradigm will proudly misrepresent something to get you on their side. And then 90% of the team sport players go out and repeat what they said on this channel without even looking at the actual documentation. For example, during the Supreme Court rulings, or Garcia, for example, they would regularly lie about what things said, and it would repeat around the world for that matter. And you could look right at the documents and see that they were lying. And it's still the lie tend to win the day.
Fox News alert. The Supreme Court just cleared the way for Trump to deport illegals even faster. The High Court ruled that Trump can use the Alien Enemies Act to send Venezuelan gangbangers to a mega prison in El Salvador.
Only problem is they claim literally everybody they do that to are all Venezuelan murdering rapist gangbangers, even though that's 99% untrue, which is easy to look up for yourself.
This is a huge ruling in Trump's favor and a major win for the country after, as you know, D.C. Judge James Boasberg ordered a stop to the deportations. So this is pretty significant. These deportations, Caroline, can keep going.
Nope, not true. Only the ones that are proven to be connected to a verifiable Tren de Aragua case is what the ruling was. We'll show you in a second. But funny how that big grandiose framing doesn't encapsulate the reality. I mean, I guess that's the wrong way to say it, since it does a small percentage. What he's trying to make you think is that, oh, we won. It's over. We just got the right to do whatever we want now. What's the way they frame nearly everything.
This is
shocking. Caroline agrees.
a massive legal victory, Jesse, a massive victory for law and order and for our constitutional republic and the sovereignty of the United States of America.
You see how ridiculous that statement is? The sovereignty of America? What does ruling that you can deport a Trinidad Aragua member that you represent as being whoever you want to point to, being a win for sovereignty, especially since what you guys do every day, even if that was true, violating the sovereignty of this country and the people in it every single day.
We called on the Supreme Court to rein in these activist judges like Judge Boasberg, who was completely out of line in trying to say that the president didn't have the executive authority to deport foreign terrorists off of our soil. We have always maintained the position at the White House that the president was well within his constitutional authority to do so. And this decision proves that President Trump and our administration have always been right from the beginning. He will continue to.
You see how grossly inappropriate that is? Like, I'll get to the documentation. I'll show you the actual document. But what's crazy is, like I said, it's about the one example saying, look, it doesn't apply to just anybody you're deporting under that claim. That's how they're framing it. If we tell you it's a Trinidad Aragua or just a cartel gangbanger, as he says, then that means that we can deport them. It doesn't. What they're saying is that we have ruled that if they are a gang member, then of course you can do. Nobody's been saying otherwise, guys. Like, it's weird how they set up these false games. I mean, it's the same as Miller claiming they won 7-0 when in fact they lost 0-7. They're just right now in a game of PR. And Jesse Waters is one of the worst on this platform. We're just kind of like wildly partisan and almost kind of just childish about the way he frames things, exactly uses the same buzzwords they use. Like, you're not a journalist if you're on a side, guys. If you're literally on one of the teams, and it's not, I mean, politically aligned with a certain concept. I mean, he's quite literally on the team, but so too are a lot of people on the left.
Utilize the Alien Enemies Act to remove foreign terrorists and Trinidad Aragua members, vicious gang members from American communities. And because of this ruling, the United States of America is a much safer place.
Right. I mean, it's just, go on to make the case about how exactly, how you want people to read the situation. And of course, MAGA Nation breaking everything they said, exactly the case. Not true. You can read this for yourself. It's only 19 pages. It's very clear. It's very specific to make it easier to digest. Of course, using Grok to call out the right. You know what's funny, by the way? Right now, I'm noticing almost uniquely on the right, it's like making fun of people pointing to Grok, because it's funny how they keep, more than anybody right now, the people supporting Trump's team seem to be caught lying constantly, just because they're the ones mostly in power right now. So it's easier. There's not many efforts from the left to even try to convince you of things outside of going after the other team. But what's funny is they go, Grok asked. I'm like, isn't that the thing that, Elon's like, it gives answers they don't like. They go alter it and update it and give Grok point. It's just a weird thing that suddenly their thing is now the thing they make fun of because it's being used against them. It's just, it's humorous that we see the partisan game like that. But it simply says, is the Fox report accurate, specifically about the Supreme Court ruling? And it says the Fox News report you referenced appears to be a partial or simplified summary of a recent Supreme Court development, but it's not entirely accurate or complete as phrased, which is exactly lie by omission is usually the most important. And it says the court did issue the ruling on the 29th that supports the Trump administration's efforts to accelerate certain deportations, but it's narrowly focused on invoking specifically the 1798 Alien Enemies Act to target specific individuals. So the way they framed that was they can go after gangbangers. They only briefly mentioned the Alien Enemies Act in one conversation point, but the way it's being reported, if you read everyone's conversation, is that they won, and now they proved that Trump's been right the whole time. What they ruled was very specifically, the scope was small. It was that if the use of the Alien Enemies Act specifically around the proven with due process Trinidad Aragua members. It says, namely, alleged members of the Venezuelan gang Trinidad Aragua for removal to El Salvador's maximum security prison. The group that literally has deals with cartel members. It's not a secret. It does not grant blanket authority for mass deportations of all legal immigrants, despite their effort to frame it that way. Oh, there's one other part that's generally it's pretty clear. In short, it's directionally true. The court did enable fast deportations, but like I said, more to the story in a very limited scope, not how they framed that. So thinking about that and read it for yourself, it's important to understand how much the effort is needed to convince you that what they're doing is correct. I frankly don't think this has anything to do with immigration, other than how it is used through that to go after whoever they want. But the idea that they're actually going after drug dealers and, as we'll get to, as it's now being pivoted into just a Venezuela invasion, like surprise, surprise. Like I said, remember, I could be wrong. Maybe they'll continue both. I get the sense they're going to shift into Venezuela and just the boat thing will just be a phantom of the past. In the sense of that immediacy of the situation, may pop up later down the line. But the point was, it'll show you that it wasn't really about drugs, but it was about using that narrative to go after Venezuela. And I think there's many points to get into from there. Now, on the 1st of April 2025, we did a show called Trump Deportations Revealed to be Full of Innocent People, Legal Immigrants with No Criminal Record. That stands to this very day. It's only become far, far worse. And the data is actually more represented than you realize. And the truth is, it's limited because there's many ways we'll get into that the DHS makes an effort to not count things that it should, or rather, loopholes that allow you to not see certain things that are counted. It's just very dishonest. But this is first and foremost to remember that whether we're even talking about U.S. citizens, people with green cards, people with visas, even illegal immigrants, despite the ignorance around this conversation, 100%, without question, roundly upheld by the Supreme Court, have constitutional rights. Most importantly, due process. It's not hard to understand. It's actually very easy. And there's been numerous Republican judges that have upheld that. Or rather, the point being that all these people who had no criminal record and were here legally were taken advantage of. And so that applies in principle exactly to the U.S. citizen situation. So that principle, that line has already been crossed. But we got into the point of him saying numerous times, and this is my report on the 22nd of March, Trump could send Americans to El Salvador. It's very clearly been floated. Americans speaking out about Israel's genocide could be next. In principle, it's the exact same thing. As well as on the 4th of May, an amendment was put forward to say, hey, let's make sure we can't deport U.S. citizens, even though you don't need that, even though it's currently illegal to do it anyway. Voted it down. See, and it became some, Democrat secret. No, at the end of the day, there was Republicans too. The point was that it very clearly was about not deporting American citizens, and your government said, we don't want that. We don't want reinforcement of that rule because we're flirting with going the other direction. Where we are. Now, here's Trump again saying, not naturalized, but homegrown people could be deported. Now, again, whether it happens or not, even I'm considering whether it was just really to scare people into place, but he did say it many times.
We use it for violent criminals, our own violent criminals.
I call them homegrown criminals.
Yes.
The
homegrowns.
The ones that grew up and something went wrong and they hit people over the head with a baseball bat. We have, and push people into subways just before the train gets there, like you see happening sometimes. We are looking.
An SUV believed.
Oops. Sorry. That was the end of it. I bumped it on accident. But so basically, that Americans, there's no debating it, despite how much people push back on that because they don't want to acknowledge that Trump is saying, maybe the most illegal, unconstitutional thing, maybe, right? Or continually claiming that he's not bound by the Constitution or saying that Article 2 gives him power to do whatever he wants. None of these things are true. It's just painful to watch the constitutional illiteracy in this country right now that is allowing people like this to do what he's doing. So we already saw this. Now, this is actually a new article from the 16th, but it followed the one from before that started the reporting. This is just more specific in the title, and we'll go through this right now. We found, and this is ProPublica again, we found that more than 170 U.S. citizens, more than 170, have been held by immigration agents. They've been kicked, dragged, and detained for days. Now, this is not even remotely only based on ProPublica. We're not even going to get into the majority of what they're talking about on this. I'm going to go through examples that you can verify for yourself. And this is just what I've scooped up and scraped up over the last so many weeks for this show. All the stuff that I've used from all the past shows, which is a ton of content, not even including today. So imagine how many more, if we really wanted to make a tally of even just what I've shown you. It's insane how many American citizens have been violated. Now, let's go through this first, and we'll come back to the clip here of Noam. Well, let's play it first. We'll play it again in a second. Here's Noam claiming that this is not happening.
I can't hear you. There's no American citizens have been arrested or detained. We focus on those that are here illegally, and anything that you would hear or report that would be different than that is simply not true and false reporting.
Wow.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great.
Guys, that's just brazen. That's just straight up dishonesty. And she knows it. You must realize that. So she's been either directed to lie or she's covering her own butt. That's wild. So starting with this one. We'll show how clearly she's being dishonest. But then remember, we'll go through videos after video of, court documents, of news reports, of police reports. I mean, there's just really no denying this. Ask Rock. They'll all tell you this. Now, 170 citizens, by the way, that you can prove. We're not blindly trusting ProPublica. Nobody out there should blindly trust any outlet or any program. The truth is, if you read it, which we'll go through some of it, there's undeniable evidence. Again, like the things we're talking about, that come from court documents, that they are admitted. But it says, when the Supreme Court recently allowed immigration agents in the Los Angeles area to take race into consideration during sweeps, Justice Brett Kavanaugh said that citizens shouldn't be concerned. Quote, if the officers learn that the individual they stopped is a U.S. citizen or otherwise lawfully in the United States, he wrote, they promptly let the individuals go, which is just not true. And we're going to get into more than just that they detained them accidentally or even unintentionally. We're going to get into the way that they abuse that situation. We're going to get into the potential sexual abuse. We're going to get into the fact that they threaten people and then actually go after people and then lie about the interactions to justify their illegal actions. I'm not saying in every single case. You can even decide whether you think it's the majority. The point is, it's 100% happening. And they're lying to you about it. And there are people screaming about constitutional rights and liberty and freedom who are absolutely blind to it or even agree with it. Even with the constitutional issue, even with a internationally legal issue with Venezuela, which very much connects, as we'll get into. But it says, but that is far from the reality many citizens have experienced. Americans have been dragged, tackled, beaten, tased, and shot by immigration agents. Here's just a few of those. This is the links that they included, and I'm not even going into these either. In fact, we have talked about this person, this we mentioned, who is George Reitz, a U.S. citizen and Iraq war veteran. Now, you know the story, guys. He got arrested. He was working at a legal, a completely up and up legal cannabis farm, and they came up on him, and he tried to say, I'm a U.S. citizen, and they didn't believe him, and they arrested him. And then they got embarrassed by it, apparently, and they kept him in jail for, I think, a week or more. Didn't give him what he needed. He wouldn't let him call anybody. This is a veteran U.S. citizen. They released him, and then knowing that he was really disgruntled about it, they made up a whole story about he was being violent the whole time. And this has been going on. I mean, the point is, he argues, and they think the evidence backs up, if I remember correctly, that that's not the case. That there was other witnesses that were like, that's not even remotely what happened. And then on top of that, the very easily proven track record of just since this administration that they've been caught lying repeatedly to cover the actions just like this. Now, you may want to make the argument that it's just how ICE is. It's possible. I wouldn't disagree. Or U.S. authority. But I think the real problem is that what they've done really aggressively driving, as we'll get into, for example, things like this, where an ICE agent, if you want to call them that, points a gun at a U.S. citizen and says, bang, bang, you're dead, liberal. All documented. The point is that I think what we're dealing with are when they expanded this rapidly and used emotional partisan politics to drive the agenda and then basically deputized bounty hunters and random people to be doing this because they didn't have enough people. Somehow, and now we're seeing the byproduct of that. And people that have been given absolute authority and been told by Noam and Bondi and Trump and everybody else that don't worry, we're on your side, we'll back you no matter what. Lie, lie, lie. I mean, that's what we're seeing. So my point is, when you look at something like George here, you know they have a history of doing this to cover their own butts. And so the reality becomes pretty clear. Here is an example of a 79-year-old U.S. citizen pinned by ICE agents, and he was illegally pinned. He is a U.S. citizen. They didn't believe him. They tackled him to the ground. And I believe that's the guy who they hurt his back or something like that. We've talked about all of these in the past. Now, what's crazy about he was arrested. So already all of these are examples to make Noam look like a liar. All of them. Reitz was detained for weeks. In fact, I just had that. Let me look at it real quick. Where was that? I don't want to read it all through right now, but the original story did reference how long it was. I mean, yeah, without even checking his ID, he was claiming he was a U.S. citizen. They didn't care. George pleas were met with silence. He missed his daughter's birthday. He wasn't allowed to give a hearing or phone calls. I mean, think about how incredible that is. Not just a veteran, not just a U.S. citizen, but anybody basically not being allowed to see a lawyer, not giving phone calls. What country do we live in, guys? Or released with no apology. I guess it doesn't say. Not in this quick report, but I think it was a week or more that I know for sure it was at least a week. I forget exactly. Here's another example. Oxnard man released after being detained by ICE agents while filming father's arrest. No, a U.S. citizen. Just because he was filming, and they're doing that too. They're being given the allowance to go after anybody who's obstructing when all they're doing is filming, when all they're doing is trying to keep track, or publicly reciting public available information like their license plates, and having screaming broflake, snowflake liberal types like libs of TikTok come out and say, oh my God, they're doxing them. And it's a publicly available thing. We'll get to that in a second. You can ask Grok too, and they'll say, nope, not illegal. But these, Republicans that are acting like the same liberals they like to make fun of are lying to you, or they don't know any better. The point, though, is that people are trying to film what are illegal actions and are being arrested for it, or regular actions and are being arrested for it, and then being accused of violence because they can't do that. It's pretty easy. U.S. citizen, this is from a month ago, tased and detained during ICE operations in, how do you say that? Deplanus? It's everywhere. I mean, this is not hard to find. And there's Noam lying to you about it. That's weird. I hear something playing in the background very lightly. Let me know if you guys hear that in the chat. That's strange. Who knows what that is? All right, continuing. So, dragged, tackled, beaten, tased, and shot by immigration agents. They've had their necks kneeled on. Now, what's funny is people love to, usually the response from stuff like this is goes, well, they shouldn't be in the country illegally then. It's like, are you paying attention? Like, these are American citizens who didn't do anything wrong, but that's how you get the response. Well, they must have been getting in the way. It's like, that doesn't make it okay for them to physically assault people who aren't, like, even if they were, getting, like, let's just say, like, you can go over many examples. Let's just say they were getting in the way. The idea that they treat them this way, that they detain them, that they hold them without charge, they don't get a lawyer, none of that. It doesn't matter whether they slap the cop in the face. There are rights that shall not be infringed. Remember, Republicans? And it says they've been held outside in the rain while they're in their underwear. At least 3 citizens were pregnant when agents detained them. One of those women had already had the door of her home blown off while Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, watched. All these are U.S. citizens, guys. Links included, like I just showed you. About 2 dozen Americans have said they were held for more than a day without being able to phone lawyers or loved ones. Like, how is that acceptable to anybody, no matter what the charge is? Being held without charge, by the way, and then not being allowed lawyer, anybody. I think they feel like they have this loophole where if they don't charge you with a crime, that they, held you for a week, which has happened. Let you go without a crime, without a charge, which happens almost every time because they don't have anything. They just want to threaten you with the idea of it. But then because they didn't charge you and you don't know what their face is, which we'll get into, which is all by design, who do you blame? All right? Your rights were abused. You say the DHS did it, and they deny it. You don't have any names, badge numbers, information, and they go, well, we're going to ignore you. Sure, go ahead and spend $100,000 to try and come at us, and we'll probably win. They know that. And this is why they're hiding their faces, and all of that is breaking the law. Videos of U.S. citizens being mistreated by immigration agents have filled social media feeds, but there is little clarity on the overall picture. The government does not track how often immigration agents hold Americans. How is that possible? I actually think the reason is because that's supposed to be so unprecedented that they don't even have a reason to track it. Today, they very much have a reason to track it. They're just not. We compiled and reviewed every case we could find on agents holding citizens, ProPublica, against their will, whether during immigration raids or protests. It says, while the tally is almost certainly incomplete, we found more than 170 such incidents during the first 9 months of President Trump's second administration. Excuse me. Among the citizens detained are nearly 20 children. Not the ones that were deported, by the way, including 2 with cancer. That includes 4 who were held for weeks with their undocumented mother and without access to the family's attorney until a congresswoman intervened, which they then made out to be some radical left lunatic, which all she was doing was giving them their rights. Even if you agree she's radical left lunatic. The point is that that person doing the right thing, even because she has an interest in calling out the other side, does not make her doing it for the right reasons. But it doesn't make it incorrect. The partisan game. It's infuriating. Immigration agents do have authority to detain Americans in limited circumstances. Agents can hold people whom they reasonably suspect are in the country illegally. Now, the reasonable, very difficult to make sure. The point is they're supposed to have something to go on. That's why they just lie and say, we had an ongoing investigation. But we know we can prove that, like, more than anything, they're just profiling people. But In this case, they can say if they reasonably suspect you're here illegally, they can hold you. But then when you prove you're a citizen and they still took you to jail, that's where the largest issue comes in. Before we go to deportation, it says they found more than 50 Americans, 50, who were held after agents questioned their citizenship. Almost all of them Latino. I mean, guys, anybody who's being honest about this is not hard to recognize. It's not secret what's happening. They just don't want to admit to how blatantly bigoted and racist this is. And I don't think it's actually because of like inherent racism for most of the conversation. I think it's because this is about the agenda of allowing this to whoever they want to go after. The problem, though, Americans who were, I am a U.S. citizen, and then they held them. So understand that even holding them in general is unprecedented. They find out they're U.S. citizens. They no longer believe that they're illegally in the country, and they still hold them anyway. Immigration agents also can arrest citizens who allegedly interfered with or assaulted officers. It says, we compiled cases of about 130 Americans, including a dozen elected officials accused of assaulting or impeding officers. Guess what they found? And I can prove this too. These cases have often wilted under scrutiny. In nearly 50 instances that we have identified so far, charges have never been filed, or the cases were dismissed because those are the ones they tried to push and the judge wasn't having it because it was flimsy. It was hyperbolic based on things they couldn't prove. It says our count found a handful of citizens have pleaded guilty. Now, whether those were actually even guilty or just afraid of going to jail for what they claim they were charging them with, which is, 20 years, who's to say? But it says mostly to misdemeanors, though. So even most of the people that ultimately pled guilty is probably because they maybe did throw something, or violate, vandalism, things that sure are charges and crimes. Prove it, charge them. But at the end of the day, does that represent rapists and murderers and gang members and cartels? No, that's the image. These are American citizens who are protesting, who are filming and being charged by and large, which we can prove. It says among the detentions in which allegations have not stuck, masked agents pointed a gun at, pepper sprayed and punched a young man. This will be very relevant in a second, who had filmed them searching for his relative, right? Filming them. That's it. Another agents knocked over and then tackled a 79-year-old car wash owner we showed you, pressing their knees into his neck and back. He was innocent and he was a U.S. citizen. His lawyer said he was held for 12 hours and wasn't given medical attention despite having broken ribs in the incident and having recently had heart surgery. But who cares, right? Because in their morally righteous endeavor to go after evil brown people everywhere, then that's okay, right? Now, look, even if everything you think is happening is true, how is that acceptable to anybody? Now, if this was a one-off and they go, oh, we thought he was this guy, we made a mistake, maybe you could pass it. But it's every day, over and over, in ways that prove to you that they just go after whoever they can and deal with it after the fact. Sometimes Americans get caught in the way. Nowhere should that be okay with any American who believes in the Constitution. It says in a third case, agents grabbed a handcuffed a woman on her way to work who was caught up in the chaotic raid on street vendors. Had nothing to do with it. In a complaint filed against the government, she described being held for more than 2 days, which is right there a major crime on top of everything else because she's a U.S. citizen, without being allowed to contact the outside world for much of that time. How is that possible? Realize even the 48 hours is for some suspicion of illegality. The reality is you could prove that, and they held her, in my opinion, to punish her for getting involved. And I mean, or even just they perceive that she just happens to be caught in the middle of it, getting dropped off, and all of a sudden you're now part of it. And we know you meant something. We know you were probably protesting with the evil lefties. That's what they are acting like. That's why they're saying these things out loud. In one case, to a Republican veteran, called the guy a liberal because he was trying to protest. It goes on to say the Supreme Court has ruled that 2 days is generally the longest federal officials can hold Americans without charges. Why at all that's even the case is beyond me. But that violated it right there. It says in response, there's George Redis right there, to questions from ProPublica, the Department of Homeland Security said agents do not racially profile or target Americans. It says, we don't arrest U.S. citizens for immigration enforcement. Just lie. That's Tricia McLaughlin. Like, clearly there's a policy of, and this isn't new, but them lying to you as a matter of policy is not even remotely new. The way that they're doing it, I think the main difference is just how bad they are at this, genuinely. Now, yes, it is kind of the degree they're doing it is kind of incredible, but it's also because they're so bad at this. The lies they put out are like unnecessarily hyperbolic. So, of course you're doing that. Like, why wouldn't you just go, yes, we've had some examples. We know you can prove that, but here's why. And they were rationalized. They were justified. They were mistakes. Like, that would work for most people. They go, well, that probably makes sense. People that, but they just lied to you. Now, maybe that's flooding the zone. But why would you do that about something that's so important and so obviously criminal? I don't know. It says the government has long ignored recommendations for it to track such cases. Of course it has. Even as the U.S. has a history of detaining and even deporting citizens, including during the Obama administration and Trump's first term. Right, because it's not appropriate to make this only about Trump. Now, what's happening today is shockingly unprecedented, but there have been examples in the past. So I would argue that's them, the slow normalization of these things to a fever pitch to where it's driven in aggressively. That's how this always goes. It says Garcia Venegas began filming after his undocumented brother asked agents for a warrant. In response, the footage shows agents yanked his brother to the ground, shoving his face into wet concrete. Think about that. That'll kill you if it's hard enough, right? Because you won't be able to breathe, but who cares? Because he's this rapist, murdering, trendy Arago. Who cares? But if he's brown and maybe an immigrant, that's how that the momentum is around like that. I mean, we all see Bondi and Noam and the rest and the way that they scream these things, even like about Garcia or anybody. It's obviously hyperbolic. Even if you do believe they're an illegal immigrant, what they do is just turn everyone who's even suspected of that into a rapist, murdering, stabbing grandmother maniac. It's just kind of embarrassing right now. But in this case, a person who is here illegally is shoved into the wet concrete. Garcia Venegas kept filming until they grabbed him too and knocked his phone out of the ground. Why? Was he doing it? No, you can look at the video. He's just standing there filming, but they don't like that. And he's brown too, so he's probably a criminal. Even though he wasn't, he's a U.S. citizen. It says other coworkers filmed what happened next. As immigration agents twisted the 25-year-old's arm, they repeatedly tried to take him to the ground while he yelled, "I'm a citizen." They didn't care. Officers pulled out his real ID. Funny how that works, isn't it? The thing that's supposed to be the most important and the most definitive digital ID overlap. And she's like, I've got a real ID. That should be the end of it, right? Which Alabama only issues to those legally in the United States, of course. And it says, but the agents dismissed it as a fake. You see right there, I mean, even if everything else before it, these people are criminals, right? It's just, there's no way around it. They're above and around the law in their minds. But then you have an ID. It's your responsibility to then do your due diligence. They don't care. They know in their minds, as far as I can tell, that no one's going to hold them accountable. Just scoop them up. We'll figure it out later. And because he was filming, or even worse, to be honest, that they were doing, they just want to, it's a fake. That would be their narrative because they want to get this guy in jail to punish him for filming. That's what I'm seeing. We'll go through these cases in a second. And it says they pulled out his real ID. Agents dismissed it as a fake. Officers held him handcuffed for more than an hour. His brother was later deported. It says Garcia Venegas was so shaken that he took 2 weeks off of work. Soon after he returned, he was working alone inside a nearly built house, listening to music on his headphones when he sensed someone watching him. A masked immigration agent was standing in the bedroom doorway. Now, this is a different story, by the way, than one we're going to get to in a second, that also went the same way. This was... Oh, wait, hold on. I want to make sure, I want to double check, make sure that's accurate. Oh, wait, where was that? Dang it. Maybe I'll come back to it. Oh, it is right here. Okay. Okay, this is him. Okay, just make sure. So I have these. This is the same guy. So the point, and this is actually wild. We've talked about this one. I think it's the only one that we're including today that we've talked about in the past. This video right here, which just very quickly you can watch. What you're seeing is them accosting him. He's the one in the green. These are agents that run up to him, start attacking him. As it says, remember in this May video of a U.S. citizen wrestled to the ground by ICE agents and detained for over an hour despite having a real ID? Well, guess what? It gets worse because 2 weeks later, they did it to him again. Handcuffed him again, detained him again, despite his real ID. Now, and then this is even Homeland Security coming out and going, fact check. And they're lying, by the way. And you can prove this today. During a targeted worksite operation, this individual attempted to obstruct and prevent the lawful arrest. They're lying. And this is where this builds, and we're gonna have plenty more examples. As here's just Patrick calling them out. The point is that this has all come out in court and everything else. The bottom line is they went after him, and he believes this is vindictive because he was proven to not be an illegal immigrant. He took time off work. He came back, and they just did it again. Now, there's only one or two possibilities there. Either that's how completely frivolous this is, and they just were like, look, a brown guy in a house, immigration, let's get him. didn't even care. And then again, didn't care that he had an ID. Or they went back to punish the guy for, I don't know, making them look stupid. So this is what they do. They insert the mass of the claim that he just was violent or obstructed anything. You can prove it with everything you just saw. They went after him. And that's what came out. You can read through all the details for yourself, look it up, the court cases, take their name, search for it. It's not hard to recognize. Over and over this happens. It says DHS did not respond. Oh, it says, and then they held him. Yeah, so the second time they show up at his workplace. This time, agents didn't tackle him, but they again dismissed his real ID. Then they held him to check his citizenship. Garcia Venegas says agents also held 2 other workers who had legal status. So why'd they show up at all? Why? Because they're brown people working on a house. You must see that by now. All of them were legal, so what did they go there for? They either happened by it or they wanted to go after that guy. DHS did not respond to ProPublica's questions about Garcia Venegas and its detentions, or to a federal lawsuit that he filed last month. See, he's suing them because he's in the right and he can prove it. It says the agency has previously defended the agent's conduct, saying, quote, he physically got in between agents and the subject during the first incident. The footage does not show that. And Garcia Venegas was never charged with obstruction. And see, this is where it gets even more interesting. Okay, if you want to claim that they ran over you with the car, or in this case, that he got physically in between you and was violent, then why wouldn't you charge him with that crime? The crime you used to justify taking him down in the first place. If you're willing to arrest him for the charge, why wouldn't you later charge him with that? You see how insane this becomes? And so on top of all of it, they're just using that as the preface. Then they act like you should be happy you didn't go to jail, or rather didn't get charged and continually go to jail. So he's suing them because he's right. George Redes was among and I'm saying that because that is the case. Look into it. George Redes was among the citizens arrested despite immigration agents, this is the veteran at the cannabis farm, despite the agents appearing to know his legal status. He also disappeared into the system for days without being able to contact anyone on the outside. Still, Redes' family couldn't find him. They called every law enforcement agency they could think of, and no one even gave him an answer. This is a U.S. citizen and a veteran who just vanishes. It says they broke his windows. No, this is a different one now. This. I'm trying to go through these, rapidly. There's only a few examples I want to show. No, this does appear to be, this is the right one. It says eventually they spotted a TikTok video showing him driving to work. His family went to the farm where the TV reporters were interviewing families and couldn't find their loved ones. So this is the only way they found out. Don't they have a responsibility, especially if it's a U.S. citizen or anybody? So it says, quote, they broke his window. They pepper sprayed him. They grabbed him. They threw him on the floor. His sister told the reporter, we don't know what to do. We're just asking to let my brother go. He didn't do anything wrong. He's a veteran, a disabled U.S. citizen. It says it on his car. They pepper sprayed him. They broke his window. They threw him to the floor. For what? You realize this whole time he's going, I'm an American citizen. I'm a veteran. They didn't care. They think he's lying because he's brown. Redes was held for 3 days, a full day longer than what's even legally possible in any context for a U.S. citizen that didn't break the law. And it says, without even given the opportunity to make a phone call. His family only learned where he had been after his release. His leg had been cut from the broken glass they never treated. He said the lingering pepper spray was burning his hands from the 3 days ago. He tried to soothe them by filling sandwich bags with water. Ritz recalled that agents knew he was a citizen. He said, quote, they didn't care. He said one DHS officer laughed at him, saying he shouldn't have come to work that day. Think about that. They still sent me away to jail. He added that cases like his show Kavanaugh was wrong completely earlier about saying they'd let him go when they found out. It says DHS, of course, did not answer their questions. That says an agency post asserted he was, quote, arrested for assault after he, quote, became violent and refused to comply. Everyone around them says that's not true. Indeed, he says he was never told why he was arrested. Now, if you're to believe that he was violent with what we see them doing today, charging people for throwing a sandwich at somebody, you're going to believe that they wouldn't charge him with a crime to get him after in any case? No, the guys, they know what's happening. You're going to arrest a veteran and a U.S. citizen who has 3 witnesses that all tell you they're lying? No, they won't do that because that will blow up in their face. They've learned that already. But think about how insane this is. This is just one very provable example. Think about how many Americans are falling through the cracks. That don't have a voice, that don't have massive social media presence, that aren't veterans or that to be able to get coverage because it's the veteran overlapping point is concerning for people who are Republican more than anything. My point is there are probably people that don't have these buzz topics that get ignored, that nobody even knows are languishing in some jail somewhere. Rather the wrong word, but just, suffering. It says, the government's cases are sometimes so muddied that it's unclear why agents actually arrested a citizen. Andrea Velez was charged with assaulting an officer after she was accidentally dropped off for work during a raid on street vendors in downtown Los Angeles. She said in a federal complaint that officers repeatedly assumed that she did not speak English. Federal officers later requested access to her phone in an attempt to prove that she was colluding with another citizen arrested that day, who was charged with assault. You see, this is not they have a case with evidence they're tracking down. This is guessing and then hoping to find something that backs up your assumption. She's dropped off. She has nothing to do with what's going on, which, by the way, is later proven with all of this. The point is that they just go, you don't even speak English, or let me see your phone, hoping to find something that proves the evidence-free assumption that she must be associated with all of this. That's not police work, guys. That is, what would you even call that? I'm sure there's a legal term. What would be the term for that? Bottom line is it's illegal. Whether your phone or not, by the way. Like, the phone is a huge overlap to this that becomes a massive privacy issue. We're going to get to that in a minute. She was one of the Americans held for more than 2 days. Again, a crime on top of a crime. It says DHS did not respond to our questions about Velez, but it has previously accused her of assaulting an officer. A federal judge has dismissed the charges. Every time what they're discussing in here, that's why it's going to be every time in this conversation. The point, though, is this is constantly. If you listen to the judges, left and right, they're blown away by what they've done so far. With the allegations, the lies, they're destroying any kind of semblance of what's the term? I forget the term now. Where basically the court takes at face value what things are presented until they later flush it out. Now they're basically going, look, we have to double check everything they're saying because they're lying about everything. Everyone knows what's going on except for people that are lying because of an agenda, it seems. Other citizens also said officers accused them of crimes and then suddenly questioned their citizenship, including a man arrested after filming Border Patrol agents break a truck window, and a pregnant woman who tried to stop officers from taking her boyfriend. Their links are all right here. For example, right? Pregnant U.S. citizen went to the hospital after immigration agents detained her. These are all very clear. The point was citizens who basically are doing something completely legal, filming, for example, and they go, basically, I forget, there's one I saw that was on video where they basically goes, maybe you're an illegal alien. He throws out a claim that's like, maybe we'll find out that you're an illegal alien, floating the idea that maybe that'll just work itself out. Maybe we'll just accuse you. They're threatening them. Just get away or we're going to find a reason to arrest you. That's what we're dealing with today. That is authoritarian. That is, might makes right is the thing I was thinking of, but the point is that's the kind of the rampantly lawless government leadership or just rulership from left and right that has driven us to a point to where people go, who cares? I like it. Bad Democrat. I don't care if it's violation. After arrested, where was I? Yeah, it's basically suddenly accuse them of crimes or suddenly question their citizenship because they're there. The prospects for any significant reckoning over agents' conduct, even against citizens, are dim. This is what's so frustrating. The path for suing federal agents are even more limited than they are for local police. Why in the world would that be possible? Because of where we are today. Because the government doesn't want you to have accountability. It says, and that's if agents can even be identified. The crux of the point for why they're hiding themselves. He says, what's more, the administration has gutted the office that investigates allegations of abuse by agents. Okay, so not only do they already have set reality where you're basically impossible to go after them, we already have the reality that they're not even counting how many Americans they're arresting. We now have the reality that they're blocking their faces. They're not identifying who they are, their badge numbers, no warrants. This is shockingly unaccountable. And on top of that, they've gutted the investigative team that might actually investigate any of this anyway. Totally not organized, is it? Now, more examples that get a little bit more severe. But let's listen to what she said again, just to make sure you really absorb how insane it is that she's even saying that.
I can't hear you. There's no American citizens have been arrested or detained. We focus on those that are here illegally. And anything that you would hear or report that would be different than that is simply not true and false reporting.
Right. So I'm right. And anyone says that's happening is a fake news reporter. Simple, right? Who cares about all the facts? all the verified examples, all the court documents, all of the police reports, but it's all just fake news. I mean, you know, it's funny how that became like a Trump against the left thing, but it's just, this is a government thing. Everything is. They're using it to be able to dismiss the things they don't like. It's just constant. But as Mehdi Hassan writes, just hardcore, brazen, demonstrable lying. It's truly astonishing to watch. And I've seen Mehdi Hassan lie the same way, by the way, but nonetheless, he's correct in saying that right now. Now, this is just grok. How many U.S. citizens have been wrongly arrested by ICE since the beginning of 2025? Now, this says the general reporting going around that you can verify 170, but it's more than that. It says this number aligns with patterns from other sources. September 2025, the New York Times analysis identified at least 15 publicly reported cases through court documents, but emphasized the total is higher, which we know. Now, I'm just include this. You can go through and look. The point is, again, just showing the I guess, Republican-aligned grok idea that's undermining what the Republican team is saying. But the reality is there's tons of cases here, but they've listed them all off. We've gone through all of them. Here's a few more examples that I think are very relevant. Now, I'll wait to it. I was going to bump one ahead really quickly to make a point. There's one that I want to show you about a sexual abuse allegation, but it relates to the point I was just making, but this should carry through the whole conversation. We'll get to it in a second. So, U.S. citizen. Noam says didn't happen, right? Here's a U.S. citizen who was held for pickup by ICE even after proving he was born in the country. Constant reality where you prove you're a citizen and they kind of don't care anyway. A U.S. citizen, this is from April of this year. U.S. citizen was arrested in Florida for allegedly being in the country illegally and held for pickup by immigration authorities even after his mother showed a judge her son's birth certificate. And the judge dismissed the charges. Now, here's what's interesting. When we're going to remember this, when we get to maybe I can just show you real quick. Was that the one? Basically, the point is the birth certificate is essentially taking a back seat to what their app tells them. I think that's here. We'll come back to all this, by the way. But anyway, so the point is ultimately, I think that's in this right here. You can't refuse to be scanned by ICE's facial recognition app. Yeah, that's what it is right here. We'll come back to this. The point is to remember that this might be why that they're going, oh, well, she has a birth certificate. Well, we don't care. We've been told to go by the Israeli app that we're using. We'll get to that. But it says the charge. So the case to take here, regardless of my point, though, is that they shown a birth certificate and didn't care. The judge dismisses the charges. And for a moment, they don't care. The charge of illegal entry into Florida was dropped Thursday after his mother showed the judge his state identification card, birth certificate, and social security card, said Kennedy, who attended the hearing. It took that all to make this happen. Think of how wild that is. It says court records show Judge LaShawn Riggins found no basis for the charge. Lopez Gomez briefly remained in custody even after ICE requested he remain there for 48 hours, a common practice when the agent wants to take custody of someone. ICE did not respond for request of comment. So he remained afterward regardless. 48 hours. Like this, they're playing this time game with 48 hours, but the case is when you prove they're a U.S. citizen, that doesn't count anymore. But these people are probably bounty hunters and don't even know anyway. The case drew widespread attention because ICE is not supposed to take custody of U.S.-born citizens, period, in general. While the immigration agency can occasionally get involved in cases of naturalized citizens, but very specific circumstances, by the way. It says who may have committed certain offenses, such as lying on immigration forms. It's very specific. It has no authority over people born in the U.S. And they use that specific opening right there to pretend they're going after a lot of, oh, we were mistaken, essentially. We thought he did this or lied. The point, naturalized citizens are same with green card, visa, anything else. They've got rights. And so if that's the case, they still have to have a process by which they prove their claims. They're not doing that for most people anyway. It says, quote, no one should be arrested under that law, let alone a U.S. citizen, says, what was Greer again? I read this earlier. Oh, it's right there. I'm sorry. I thought it was above it. She's an immigration attorney from Florida, but she says no one should be arrested under that law, let alone a U.S. citizen. They say that they saw this person. He didn't speak English particularly well. And so they arrested him and charged him with this law that no one should be charged with, even though it turned out to be a U.S. citizen, which they held a little longer afterward anyway. I mean, is this not alarming in and of itself? One of these cases would be alarming. Like imagine if this was Biden with I mean, what would be the overlap? Just something on the left with people that, a small example, like even just the exact same situation, but make it about something else. Make it about some other, other overlap where it was going after Republican aligned immigrants from South Africa, whatever it was. People would lose their minds, and rightly so, because this is too far. Here's an example of a U.S. citizen. This says masked ICE agents kidnap and disappear U.S. citizen Nathan Plybon in Chicago. Now, maybe that's changed since I went live, but last I checked, nobody knew where he was. No charges have been brought against him. His family has not heard from him since he was forcibly loaded into the back of an unmarked car. Now, I'll play this for you pretty quickly. What you're going to see is this person who, the video starts right here, basically, so you can't know for sure what happened before. That's always the case. But the point is, it doesn't seem like he's necessarily fighting back. And what they argue is that him resisting is what kind of caused it. So what was the initial reason to go after him in the first place? And I'll read you what it says. Actually, let me just do that first. It says, a U.S. citizen from Chicago was detained by ICE outside the Laugh Factory where he works. Apparently he's the manager. The arrest occurred during an immigration enforcement where they're going after a different Hispanic individual. So you know where this goes. So either he did something illegal and pushed somebody or got involved, which is a crime in regard to an ICE agent, regardless of whether they're doing something illegal. Like the point is, you pushing them or doing it, they'll charge you with a crime. The point is that either he did that or he just came up and said, hey, what are you doing? That guy's not, and they arrested him. And then manufactured a reason to say he's a criminal, like we just proved to you 3 or 4 times, like literally in court, that came out to be the case. So let's be clear. That's not somehow irrational to think that maybe they would make up an allegation when they arrested a U.S. citizen, right? But so the point is that he basically said, hey, that's, intervened. And nobody seems to be able to prove that he actually committed any violence against anybody. It says Plybon intervened to question them about their actions, says Grok, leading him to be tackled, handcuffed, and then taken to custody by masked agents in an unmarked vehicle without a charge, without any other claim of no identification. Okay, all that's a crime. On top of it, though, because of how this worked out. Like if you want to punch someone in the face, I wouldn't argue, well, even as you're brought in, you're supposed to be read your rights, right? In any of these contexts, they don't do that either. The point, though, is that if they're claiming that him intervening was the violence, that they said why he had to be tackled. But it's what basically the way it turns out is they came up and said, what are you doing? They went after him because of that and then claimed that was violence. It's self-fulfilling prophecy. It's what they do. Now it says he remains in federal custody as of today, following his arraignment on, guess what? Assaulting a federal officer. He is a U.S. citizen. U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Illinois confirmed the assault charges stems from his physical resistance during detainment. Okay, so how do you make sense of this? That he's being detained and you're claiming he's resisting while being detained and that's what caused the charge. Okay, then why did he start being arrested in the first place? You see, they play this every which way they can. Here's the video. Oh, wait, that's the wrong one. Oh, you know what? Maybe I... Right, just got kicked out of StreamYard. Fantastic. Let me get set up again. You gotta love the way this works for us today. Okay. Good times. So I have to put all my videos back and, all the same old stuff, which is exactly why this happens. Maybe I didn't get it. Well, since we had to wait anyway, let's take a look. So this is a video you're going to see of him and his mother intervening because she's, and here's the thing. This is where it gets interesting is that I argue he's being arrested illegally. So if you are, like, in any case, whatever the context, if you're being arrested or an officer pulls you over and they're breaking the law or they're doing something, or maybe you believe it's not really an officer, like the reality is, or an officer bursts in your door and doesn't identify themselves. Like the law has roundly upheld in many cases that if you react thinking it's an intruder because they didn't identify themselves and somebody gets shot, that's their responsibility. You're not charged with a crime. They'll try, as they always have. But the point is that so he's being arrested illegally. And so somebody steps in to say, hey, that's a crime. Who's breaking the law? Now, this is where the courts get involved. But the reality is that if they are provably breaking the law, would that then mean that the mother trying to stop them is not? It's a good conversation. Arguably, many people, the lawyers might argue yes, depending on the way that went down. So here's this video. So, volume down a second. To me, it seems pretty clear that this is reactionary. You know, the guy didn't seem to be resisting, not really, not in the way that they make it sound. And on top of that, that the arrest was already started and he was just had his arms out. It didn't seem like anything was happening. The mother seems to have gotten involved. And that's when it got kind of tackled to the ground. But, you know, okay. But so, yeah. So go after the dumb lefty if you assume that's what he is. Who knows? Probably. But everyone will assume because they want to. But go after him because he got in the way, shouldn't allow. So is that your rapist, murdering, Trende Ragwa monster that you're getting? Or is it just a bunch of dunking on leftists that have traffic tickets? Or how, you know, let's take real stock of what this is. Is this what you want? Well, according to all the people like Nick Sorter and all the ones, this is what I voted for, dunking on them. Exactly. Children. Constantly. The point, though, is this guy, as of right now, is that's vanished into the background. Now, again, if you're the mother, and you know what's happened to U.S. citizens, which we'll get into. For example, this guy, ICE deported from an Alabama man who claims U.S. citizenship, the judge upheld, who they don't want back. That was 2 days ago. He's in Laos. They don't care. U.S. citizen. That's real. So if you know that, and you know he didn't break the law, and he's being whisked away in an unmarked car by people who identify themselves, what would you do? I'm not trying to rationalize anything. I just think about it for a second and ask yourself, who is the real criminal in this situation? Especially since this guy's the manager of a business. They rush in to take a guy. We just went over 1,000 different examples of how they're doing this without really any due diligence. Think about it for a second. Now, here are some other examples. Now, just on overlapping with that one, we'll come into a second. Where was that one? I'll come back to it. I feel like I can't find these. I want to jump back and forth. But my point was that you have examples like that where people are being grabbed and taken unjustly. You know, even in the beginning with El Salvador, remember, there were many people that were this close to being sent. An American citizen, by the way. And the only reason they were rushed off in those planes because nobody cared what they were saying, was because of the Supreme Court that said, you have to wait. And they were forced to wait. And in that waiting period, they found out that he was trying to get people to see it. The point is that they don't care. We think that we've made that clear. So this person, Jesus Freaking Congress is the name of the account, says today in Aurora. Now, from my research, it wasn't today in Aurora. So just always, guys, question everything. I'm not saying that's intentional, but the point is these things swing around. From my research, it appears to have been a couple of days before that. But yeah, it's circulating as a video online. So just be careful how, social media can be deceptive. The point is it did happen. And it says, this person just says, if you voted for this, then you have problems that politics can't fix. And I agree with that, flatly. It says, today in Aurora, I'll play it for you. A Chicago suburb, ICE agents surrounded a car of a U.S. citizen in a parking lot, fired into her windshield, and looks like pepper balls that did actually fracture the glass and cut her cheek, as she screamed that her children were in the car, which they were. Agents then dragged her from the car without presenting a warrant or probable cause, excessive force, no warrant, no justification. Now, I don't care what other thing you add to that. If you're out there going, yes, which a lot of people are, in some cases, people, by the way, that surprise me, wouldn't you go, yes, that's good, get her, but do the right thing, right? Present your evidence, or, she's a U.S. citizen, so she's not an illegal alien, so what are you charging her with? Think about this, guys. I have the evidence to go over this right now before we assume anything. She's a U.S. citizen, so the reality ends up being that they abused her rights. There was no warrant, there was no charge, nothing. Is anyone going to fix her glass on her car? Probably not. So, what do you think about that? This person says, nah, she committed an imprisonable offense because she impeded the officers, says a blind boot-licking supporter of the government, because that's what their narrative is. Anybody we arrest is because they're impeding the officers. Okay, well, is that what happened? Apparently not. Let's watch the video first, then we'll go over the evidence. First, the whistle you hear apparently is we're going to overlap in a second about this, but now you've got a lot of people, Democrats and Republicans, by the way, who are out there basically trying to keep track. right? If they see a car roll up that's not identified, they write down the license plate number, which is not a crime. We'll go over this in a second. It's public information. It should be anyway, but they're hiding it. And so the point is they show up publicly in their car when it's public information. You can write it down. Red Ford, gray car, here's license plate, ICE agent. And you can circulate that. There's no crime there. They're going to scream it's doxing, but they're hiding it from you in the first place is a crime. It's also publicly available if it's right in front of you. It's insane. But the point is that people now, they're tracking these. They're filming. They're trying to keep track. You know, if it happens in front of you, take your phone out. That's always been the case regardless of the political momentum. Now they're arresting people for filming ICE agents. On top of that, what was the other point? It was, I just lost it. There was one other thing I was going to say. That's the whistle. You have not just filming, but you've got people that are out there who are with whistles who start blowing the whistle that it's part of like the thing. And of course, is that organized Antifa protest to attack ICE agents? That's how they would frame that. What you have are Republicans, Democrats, or independents, or people that care about constitutional rights, or maybe alongside them, radical left Democrats who are out there because they're trying to highlight stuff like this. And when they see examples of it, somebody blows the whistle. Now, that's not in every single circumstance, but I've seen that continuity, and apparently that's something that they're giving to their groups and saying, blow the whistle. We'll go over it in a second. Okay, opens fire on her car. Clearly with like a paintball gun, like it's a pepper ball, I believe, a pepper spray, paintball type gun. But look at the timing on this. They run up, they surround her car. Remember, she's a U.S. citizen. So they didn't even say, hey, out, or hey, I'm a police officer. Here's nothing. 10 seconds, not even 10 seconds, and they open fire on her car. He says, get out of the car. Look at that. Get out of the car. I'm boom, 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 boom. Which, by the way, breaks the windshield, cracks it. It fractures on her face, which I'll read from the article. Her kids are in the car. Pepper spray.
I warned you. 81, 23. I got kids in my car. I warned you. I got kids in my car.
So what it appears to be, by the way, is that these are people that are monitoring, watching, maybe just by happenstance because they were there. Like I'm saying, like if you see it, you're supposed to grab your phone, whatever. And I warned you. You're not allowed to monitor what we're doing. That's what appears to be the case to me. You can decide for yourself.
I have kids in my car. I'm not moving.
Where's the crime?
I'm just trying to help you. I'm not threatening you. Do not touch me.
See, and they go after people around, which, guys, this happens every time. I mean, I've seen this almost every single time I've seen these cases. Now, here is the video, and it says here's the article, which is where I first found it. We should actually do it the other way around. But the woman was Miramar Martinez, 30-year-old citizen from Chicago, U.S. citizen, was shot multiple times by ICE in regard to the car is what they're meaning. According to her lawyer, Martinez did not ram the agents for their car, which, by the way, you can literally see on the video. They're the ones that cut her off and stopped her. And it says her vehicle did not ram the vehicle and she had a weapon. Now, let me read this first, actually. The point is that she owns it. It's in her purse. But let me read this. That's why I had it in the backward way, because this is how crazy this gets. So understand, to start, U.S. citizen. You can see the video there. And she said, I warned you. So if the argument is it was about somehow her ramming the car, you wouldn't get out and be like, I warned you. Clearly not. They were going after her for something else. It's all very clear. Trump administration accused of propaganda for shifting story and shooting amid ICE protests. This is from the 18th. Now it says, Miramar Martinez, a 30-year-old U.S. citizen, was shot multiple times by federal agents after the DHS alleged she was involved in ramming the car of Border Patrol agents in Chicago earlier this month. Her attorney and DHS, and even different bodies with the U.S. government, have conflicting depictions of who is at fault and for the escalation prior to the shots fired. It says just hours after Martinez was shot, the DHS released a statement from Secretary McLaughlin, who said that the federal agents were rammed by vehicles and boxed in by 10 cars. The statements also allege that one of the people who boxed in the agents, who it later identified as Martinez, was armed with a semi-automatic weapon. So there's different incidents, right? So after the collision of cars, agents exited the vehicle and fired 5 times on Martinez, shots at McLaughlin that were defensive shots, they called it. law enforcement was forced to deploy their weapons and fire defensive shots at an armed U.S. citizen who drove herself into the hospital to get care for wounds. The statement released on October 4th. Statement also says Martinez had already been named in Border Patrol intelligence bulletin for doxing ICE agents. You see, we warned you, you're not allowed to film this. There's more to go over. It continues, was charged with assaulting federal officers on a deadly dangerous weapon after she followed the vehicle driven by Border Patrol agents. See, this is the continuation of that. And is it illegal to be driving around? And, it's not, guys. This is the reality, especially when they're breaking the law. The incident occurred amidst heightened tensions. It says, which one was that on here? Oh, this is the next one. We'll get to that in a second. So the point is that, wait a second, hold on. Where's I feel like I'm not missing the part about the gun. Where did I put that? Damn it. Maybe I'm mixing these up. I hope not. Or maybe I closed it on accident. I do that too. Well, here, let's do this real quick. Oh, it's right there. Damn it. Okay, so feel free to make fun of me when that happens. I always jump ahead. But so the bottom line, and this is the video you can see right there, is that the claim after they found out that she had a weapon was simply just pretend that she was using her gun. Well, the reality is, after this is all fleshed out, that's not the case. She did not get charged. Ultimately, it says, yes, she legally owned this gun. So, I mean, on top of all of it, recognize that you're from a Republican standpoint of the Second Amendment, that you have the government claiming to be on your side, using her legal owning of a gun to then use against her to make it sound like that's why all this happened. Oh, you know what? We haven't even played this all the way, have we? Oh, no, we did. Here's the next one, too. So, on top of this, this is what I find so insane about how obvious this is. Broader patterns in the area. On October 4th, some of these we talked about. Agents fired at a U.S. citizen woman they claimed tried to ram them. She was armed, but drove herself to the hospital for treatment. That's what we're talking. 4 U.S. citizen children were briefly detained for safety. You see, that's the amount. It's insane. But it says October 14th, agents tackled a U.S. citizen during a traffic stop, deployed tear gas into protesters. A mother reported her non-immigration son being body slammed. October 26th, we'll show you next. Activist Ruben Morales. Now, these are overlapped. You'll see that these people are in similar group that are just trying to monitor what's going on. And even if you disagree with what I'm saying they're doing, I mean, feel free to point out the crimes they're committing if you think it's some lefty Democrat terrorist organization. I wouldn't disagree if you can prove it. The point is that what you're saying is people that are documenting them are therefore lefty terrorists because it's an easy scapegoat to make them out to be bad guys. If you know that, then prove it. I'm happy to report that. But it says activists Ruben Morales and Jesse Olazaba, both U.S. citizens, were detained while documenting agents at a school parking lot. Olazaba suffered a head injury. Both were released without charges. Over and over this happens. U.S. citizen from Aurora, of course, arrested by federal agents recount the U.S. experience. This is October 27th. 2 U.S. citizens in Aurora say that they were attacked by federal agents and detained outside of the elementary school this weekend. Now, of course, this is their story, but it's backed up by witnesses and other reports. The point is that we can see the consistency in this. Ruben Morales and Jesse Olazaba track, record, and document federal agents and ICE activity in the area, which, by the way, outside of personal identifiable information, is not a crime. This is, ask like Jason Bassler in the Free Thought Project. Like, cop watching is a very important reality of this because we've been watching cops abuse our rights for a long time. But it says on Saturday, they said neighbors alerted them to an unmarked agent's agent cars at the Allen Elementary School in Aurora. Now, we know that people have dressed up like ICE agents and pretended. We know that these people, even if ICE agents have broken the law. So if you see unmarked cars pull up at an elementary school, why wouldn't you go up and be like, I'm going to monitor this to see what's going on? If you want to, it's your right. And the point is that this is a weird situation. What if they're child predators? It's fun. What they're doing obviously draws in this kind of attention, and they're just trying to rationalize is you're not allowed to hold the people accountable for any reason. But it says, quote, I was walking up to the vehicle to see why they were parked in a teacher's parking spot. He said an agent in the back seat told him to back away. He says, I turned around to walk away, and that's when I heard footsteps coming in my direction and pepper spray hitting the back of my head. That's when I felt body contact of them taking me down, hitting me. Now, it's entirely likely that they said a snide comment or insulted them or said, you're not allowed to be here, or I'm going to be filming you, or any number of completely legal allowed things. And then they came back and sprayed him in the back of the head and tackled him to the ground. You know, I mean, because to me, it's unlikely that they just rushed it for no reason, but certainly possible with what we're seeing. It says he said once they put him in handcuffs, they identified themselves as agents, which is consistent with every other example we're seing. He shared images with NBC Chicago that show his ripped pants, bloody knees, and scratches to his throat and his forearm from the encounter. Throat and arm. Morales is a U.S. citizen and said agents questioned his status. Meanwhile, the other person was also a U.S. citizen, witnessed the interaction, and tried to intervene by blowing a whistle and recording the agents. Quote, they told me to get back, get back. I stepped back. She said they then lifted him. Funny how similar these overlapping stories are, right? This is a different one. It says they then, because that was two women before. This is a man and a woman. They then lifted him into the vehicle. So I went behind to get photos of the plates and make model of the car. Not a crime. The agent gets out of the back passenger side, which is where he had Ruben. He came out and started to come towards me. I saw that he had pepper spray in his hands. He knocked off my glasses and then sprayed her in the face. I went down like this, and he came and used his force and pushed me with both hands. That's when I fell back and hit my head. This is crazy. Morales said he was taken to the FBI office where he was questioned and later released without charges. Totally worth it, right? Liberty, freedom, democracy. Olazaba was taken to a local hospital for evaluation. Her children were in her vehicle and were left with police. Very different. I mean, very similar, but different in the same. It says, I was there just to record. That's all I was doing because people need to know what's going on. Cited for impeding a arrest. I mean, so overall, it says, as of the 27th, DHS responded to the inquiry, alleging that they both started hitting the agent's vehicles and claimed that Morales tried to punch the agent in the face and the law enforcement officers had to follow law every day and blah, 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 every single time. You realize you can prove this is not the case in almost every one of these allegations. So here we are, that they rush this person, tackle him to the ground, the other person trying to film, they come up and they knock the glasses off, spray them, knock them to the ground, arrest them both, claim they're both U.S. citizens. Everything about this is wrong. Every single thing from top to bottom, and it happens every single day in this country. If you don't care about this, guys, then you don't care about everything you guys are pretending to scream about if you're on the team sport side. Now, other examples that are not as severe as detaining and so on, but is leading in the same direction before we go to the U.S. citizen deportation. This is a new day, a new video of ICE illegally detaining another U.S. citizen in the Chicago area, this time Evanston. Agents radically profiled and handcuffed a landscaper while checking if he was a U.S. citizen. ICE is not allowed to stop random people in Illinois and demand ID. That's illegal. They do it anyway.
People, this is what they're doing. Right in Evanston, people who are working hard, like immigrants, the weakest, right? They definitely don't feel ashamed of what they're doing because clearly all those masks are just for nothing.
Okay, so right now, were you okay with this? Assuming, and it is correct, but assuming for you not knowing that that's the right setup, right? So this guy is doing his work. You don't know one way or the other. Brown guy, landscape. Sure, you can assume. And they go, hey, let's go check him out, right? Let's go just ask him for his ID. Let's go handcuff him, detain him for no charge, and just demand more information. Are you okay with that? I'm willing to bet you far more than you might realize are going, yes, and then that means you don't believe in the Constitution. That means that you do not have a principle in this conversation. The principle is the reality that even illegal immigrants have constitutional rights, let alone, by the way, somebody who's here legally.
Yeah,
he's handcuffed right now.
I don't know if he's taking me. This is absurd. Absolutely absurd. Right? This is what America has come to. We're taking like people who are working, like hardworking people, hardworking Americans, like sitting here and working. I am American citizen. Okay.
Did you hear that? Okay, so for those of you that were already going, yeah, you get, okay, well, turns out he's an American citizen, but you didn't know that in the first place. But it shouldn't matter, should it? It shouldn't matter because he is. And if you didn't know in the first place, well, that's why people have rights. And that's why they're not allowed to just go up and randomly accost people for that exact reason. And if you are okay with that, then look forward to your future and whatever the next claim is, where they come arrest you and your family without charge because maybe you looked like the wrong person that day. Maybe you had the wrong ideas that day. I'm of the mind that most Americans understand this because it's been such an important focal point for so many different things over the years. The problem is that far too many influential people who don't seem to care about anything are the ones leading the charge for why this is supposed to be okay.
This is what is happening. This is what America has become. This Gestapo state. Okay, this is it. These are the guys. These are the big American, you know, kind of safety guys that are taking people, right? The big bad immigrants, the big...
Right. So the person in the chat, right? Now imagine she hadn't recorded this. You would never know.
Bad, you know, kind of criminals. The guy working next to my house. Okay? Yeah, this is it. Yes, this is a big misunderstanding. Let's take away the people who are working hard in our country.
Yeah, so they let him go, right? Took his handcuffs off. Sorry. If you listen closely, he even said, like, oh, I'm sorry. It doesn't, well, you're sorry you shockingly violated his rights? No, you're not. You're sorry because now you have to address this. Probably because the woman is filming. Probably because there are more people around and they can't arrest her too. It's lawless right now. That very thing, even though we let him go, is lawless. They are 100% violating a U.S. citizen's constitutional rights in multiple ways, by the way. And alarmingly, far too many Americans today don't even know that or don't care. ICE rams a vehicle and then detains a U.S. citizen in Oxnard, California. Deprivation of rights under color of law. 10 years if you consider this to be an assault with a deadly weapon. Life in prison or death penalty if you consider it an attempted murder or if kidnapping is involved.
An SUV believed to be driven by an immigration agent rammed a truck in Oxnard and then took a person into custody. An immigrant rights watchdog group shot this video. Following the crash, a crowd gathered. Oxnard PD says the crowd got boisterous, so officers were sent in to, quote, keep the peace, but not to assist federal agents. The crowd eventually dispersed. The person detained was also injured and was taken to the hospital. He was later released from custody and spoke just a few minutes ago. He says he's part of a group monitoring the actions of ICE.
This is what, guys, this is not hard to recognize. This is very clear. He's a citizen. He released because he didn't do anything wrong. They rammed his car, guys. They literally rammed his car. You think that was by accident? They assumed incorrectly that he, or let me take a step back. You could argue one of two ways. They either assumed he was something he wasn't, because they thought he was filming, he must be an illegal alien or lefty terrorist or whatever, or they did it on purpose. Acted like, oopsie, we made a mistake. Now you have car damage. You spent a night in jail. We threatened you and probably tracking everything you do now. Stop filming us. I mean, look, it's funny how from one side or the other, it's easy to pretend it's not the problem. If you want to pretend for a second, this is what the left side government would do. If that makes it easy for you to wrap your mind around, we know our government is capable of this. We know they've done it before. If you want to pretend it's only one side, then you're missing the real picture here. But recognize that it's happening.
Point the police department
ago, he says he's part of a group monitoring the actions of ICE.
At one point, the police department did say that they were going to hand me over to the agents, and that's where I kind of got a little nervous because these are the same dudes that just rammed into the car and were really aggressive. So once they put me in cuffs and put me in the car, I requested.
Do you realize that not only is illegal, but also is very dangerous for everybody else on the road, which they clearly don't care about? Numerous examples of their irrational actions in live on public streets, public areas.
To go to a hospital.
Opening fire on cars full of families. At least 3 examples that I can see. One which I'll show you today.
Because I already had a headache to the agents, and that's where I kind of got a little nervous because these are the same dudes that just rammed into the car and were really aggressive. So once they put me in cuffs and put me in the car, I requested to go to a hospital to get checked out because I already had a headache at that point. My neck was sore, and we were there for a while. Then after that, they brought me here. They processed me.
Look at that last picture, though. Guys, the point was they did that to pull him over. They rammed his car to pull him over. I mean, you know, why? Probably because they don't have any light, because they're not really officially doing anything. They're not really identifying themselves or having warrants or anything like that. These are rampantly lawless criminals.
And they released me on pending charges.
Released him on pending charges, which are, as far as we can tell, are nothing.
I was shocked to be released so fast, but also at the same time, from the beginning, I knew that I did nothing wrong.
He says he was not told what those charges might be, in fact, if there even are any. He also says nobody talked to them about the damage caused to his truck and that he'll be back monitoring ICE tomorrow.
Right. Guys, how do you not? I mean, my personal opinion, clearly, that was deliberate. That was a message to the guy who is, you know, basically a guy doing something that could put them in prison. Right? Because if you film them, you could potentially identify who it is by the car they're driving and eventually go, you're the guy that that shot that guy. You're the one that broke that person's arm. You're the one who violated all those people's rights. If we eventually get to a place in the world where the government actually cares about those things, maybe, but they know that. And so this was a message, in my opinion. They rammed his car, they pulled him over, and they let him go. And you're supposed to be like, oh, thank you, thank you. You ruined his car. Right? You completely undermine what faith he might have had in any kind of government structure, police authority, if he had it at all. I mean, this is just so far over the top. Again, one of these examples by itself would be enough to understand what's going on. What is this, the 150th example today? Here's another one, and this goes to the filming point. This is important to see this little part to understand what they're trying to cover up with this. This is the same account. More ICE agents caught on film assaulting the elderly. Again, in Durango, Colorado, an elderly woman filming ICE agents had her phone stolen by the agent, which is a crime, obviously, right out of her hand. You'll see it. Then it says when she asked for it back, he grabbed her and threw her to the ground. Other agents pulled him away and they walked off. Now, did she say something insulting before that? Probably. Who cares? It's not a crime. These are children if you're going to allow, or rather, even worse than that, whatever it is. I was going to say they're children for reacting like that you're an ICE agent. You're going to lash out at a random person because they call you a name. Grow up. But on top of that, the realization that we're talking about think about how serious that is. You know, that you're willing to risk that. Even more so that you know that you must know you're going to get away with it with what's been going on in the world, with how many examples you see with your other agents that go, nobody's doing anything about that. Watch this. See that? Just watch that first part again. So she's filming him, not touching him, and he clearly hates it. But she was not breaking the law, at least in this video. See that? Grabs it.
You can't take my phone. You cannot. Oh, that's illegal, sir. That's him.
Right. Okay. So let's be clear about this. He stole her phone, which is a crime. No justification. She went up to get it back. Oh, you touched me. You're going to prison forever. Does that sound rational to you? Now, whether it's prison forever or just whatever, you're tackled to the ground, arrested for a week, or even just held and detained as a U.S. citizen. Is she a criminal? He's the one that broke the law. Are they just somehow unaccountable? Yeah, that's the world they're building. Even when they started, even when they break the law, you're not allowed to do anything. I'm not saying you should run hit him about it, but she clearly was just trying to stop him, arm on the shoulder. Hey, give me my phone back. In what world is she the criminal?
Take my phone. You cannot. Oh, that's illegal, sir. That's him. Hey! Drop that
Unaccountable. Look at this. Look at what he's doing to her. He has her in a chokehold. This is like a 70-year-old woman. That could be your mother. That could be your grandmother out there doing what she believes is right. He steals her phone, and that's what he does to her. These people have no shame, no self-respect. They don't care about any of you. In fact, my opinion is these people are not even acting for the U.S., whether they realize it or not. The bottom line, he threw her to the ground because of what he did. That is a petty, childish person who is reacting because he's been told he's unaccountable. Think of the nurses and doctors and authorities on COVID-19 timeframe. This is the same thing.
Call 911. Someone call 911. Call 911.
See, even the other agents are like, stop, pulling them away.
Someone call the police. That is assault. That is kidnapping of her phone. What's your name?
You see? So you got no faces, you got no names, you've nothing. There's literally, outside of tracking their vehicles, which I'm guaranteed they're going to now take every effort to mix that up. And the point is that's how you could try to hold them accountable. I mean, there's really no misunderstanding that. They try to lie and say 1,000% increase in attacks on ICE. Guess what? That's not only not proven, that's been proven to be false. The only thing that comes from is Tom Homan saying that out loud. The evidence you have shows you clearly that's not true. They're lying like everything else. And the reality is they're using that claim to try to highlight, try to flip the script. The reality is they're the ones violating everybody. And they're trying to cover it up. Now, when I say that, by the way, that's not meant to say at the same time there's literally zero legitimate action taking place. Typical, binary assumption for partisans. No, it's not. I didn't say that. It's not what I mean. The point is that what I'm showing you, and in most cases, even in cases where people are breaking the law, they're still violating rights. They're not identifying themselves. They're not printing warrants. Any cases, in any context, guys, it's a crime. But on top of that, yeah, there are people that are being arrested because they're illegally here, and that should happen. Or on top of that, people that might be breaking the law even more severe that are being arrested. But if you can't take a step back and recognize that something like, a huge majority of this is not that, you either know that and don't care, or you're not paying attention to the facts. And if you don't care about that, then why are you even fighting for this? Is it just about going after the other team?
You legally have to identify yourself. This is a part of the Constitution. Identify yourself. What's your name? Who are you? What's your name? Identify.
Look, just because that makes you angry because you think they're all Democrats doesn't mean that they're not breaking the law. There is no context in which that they are required to identify themselves. You know that. Everyone knows that. They just don't care. Now, they wouldn't do that if they weren't given the allowance to do that at this broad of a scale, right? A grandmother tackled to the ground. ICE agents arrest another U.S. citizen in Chicago. One agent stopped his car, then reversed the car into the vehicle while others rushed her door, forced her out of the car before her car was even in park. Why? Because she was monitoring them. You starting to get the consistency of this? This happening all over the place.
A Ford Explorer, they're getting off. He's backing up into me.
It's the car. Okay. He backs up into the car. So, as always, take the time to look into all of these. There are plenty of examples where things are taken out of context. In my research, that's not any of these. The reality being that they're initiating some kind of conflict like they do with protests and then causing that to be the reason. And they're going to say they rammed my car and they're going to arrest you because they don't want you filming. You don't think that's happening with what we just went and saw?
Why are you backing Ford Explorer? They're getting off. He's backing up into me. Why are you backing up into me? It is not illegal. It's not illegal.
To film. Monitor.
No, it's not illegal. It's not illegal. It's not illegal. It's not illegal. It's illegal. Me están arrestando 16th and Euclid. Let me park it.
Arrest for impeding.
It's not illegal. What's your badge number?
Impeding. That's what they said. This is what they're doing to people that are in their own car filming. Why? Because you're following them? Are they on public streets? Yes. In what world is this impeding? It's only in the world in which they're all criminal activity. Like what they're doing, in essence, even if going after real criminals, is criminal because they're not identifying, they're not giving warrants, they're not going through process. They are just bum rushing the country. And everyone's trying to call it out. And some of them are doing it in ways that also are probably illegal. And they should be charged with crimes like anybody would if you're being objective. But the reality is, by and large, anyone can see what's actually happening. An ICE agent pointed a gun at a U.S. citizen, said, "You're dead, liberal." Because that's no big deal, right? And this is Nick Sorter. This is what I voted for. Eric Dougherty. This is what, MAGA, hashtag winning, whatever. That seems to be what they care about. How stupid is that? New court filing in the Northern District of Illinois alleges that a federal immigration agent pointed a gun at a U.S. citizen and made a threatening remark during a protest, which, by the way, there's an example that we literally saw. I think this is a different one. I forget what he said exactly. We've covered it the show in the past, but you saw him literally point at the woman, said something about, "You're a liberal." And in two cases, the one I was mentioning earlier, where he said something about being a liberal and kind of threatened the guy, and it was a veteran Republican. But on October 26, 2025, filing status said that the officer said, quote, "Bang, bang, and you're dead, liberal." In response, a spokesman for the DHS said, quote, "As soon as he left the courthouse, he was immediately on an operation to remove violent criminals from the streets of Illinois." So ignoring, really pretending to answer the question by saying that if he was doing that, then you were an illegal criminal. pretty much like every other thing they do. The allegations go beyond a single confrontation between a protester and a federal agent. It's been a constant reality. Here, now again, I said, remember Chris Murphy mentioned in the beginning. You know my opinions about all these people. You know, this person is a U.S. senator. He's a Democrat, and he's somebody who I've seen lie more times than I can count. Doesn't mean he's lying here just because he is a dishonest person or because they all lie or because left versus right. The point is that there is lies by omission. There are lies by, 99% truth. 1% lie is usually the most important type of lie. All that's to say is that this is not incorrect. What he's saying here is laying out basically what I just did. Now, do I think Chris Murphy truly cares about your rights? No, I don't. I think this is in his interest to play the counterbalance to the current power so they can swing that around next time and act like they're the ones fighting back. It's the same old cycle. Now, whether he knows that or not, I don't know. I can be wrong about that too. You can consider it for yourself. Point is, Chris Murphy or not, this is accurate. And what's important to understand is that they are brazenly making things up and being caught in court. Or like the times I just showed you, being caught by video, being caught by their own people. I mean, over and over, they're being caught misrepresenting what's happening in order to hide their crimes.
About something really serious. This is DHS and the administration putting out misleading, sometimes completely false information about what's going on in Chicago and Portland, places where you have big military presence, where you have incidents involving CBP. And
I will say, as always, that that's not unique to the right or Trump's administration. It is very much, they lie about the situation like they're breathing, but it is a bit more extreme right now, but also, like I said, that they're just bad at it. So it makes it very clumsy, very obvious, which makes it even more clear.
Nice. Obviously, you're seeing these unbelievable videos coming out of Portland and Chicago. You have a member of the clergy being shot in the head with a plastic bullet, it appears. You've got tear gas being dispensed into neighborhoods. It's absolutely out of control. But
now, the pastor's actually an important one to comment on, because remember, he's a pastor in the local area. And he's an active protester in ideas that he protests, but there's, as far as I can tell, evidence-based. He's not some, as they called him, as even Republican leaders in government called him a Democrat active or an Antifa. What did they say? Well, they called him an Antifa, like professional agitator is what I think they called him. Why? Because he was a priest. Think about the right, a pastor praying on the sidewalk, and they shot him in the head with a pepper ball. We played the video for you. Just showed it right there. So, I mean, think about that right there. And the idea being that you can prove that he was a pastor. He works at the church. It's very, very easy to prove. And on top of that, that he's not as far as they could tell, the evidence doesn't show he's in some organized thing. He just protests because he cares. Now, I could be wrong. He could be lying. The point is the evidence is what matters, and you don't get everything in front of you proves the opposite of what they're saying. But think about that kind of situation where then you become a terrorist. Based on Noam and Bondi, this pastor then became a terrorist. Now, think about how alarming that is with what we're going to get into with the whole thing in Venezuela and the overlap, guys. This all comes together.
Being 3 hours after that shooting, DHS puts out of control. But I want to talk to you about what happens after these incidents take place. Last weekend, a Border Patrol agent shot a Chicago woman who was involved in an altercation with CBP vehicles. Less than 3 hours after that shooting, DHS puts out a statement, and it makes these pretty remarkable claims to justify why the agent had no choice but to fire his weapon. But it turns out that many of those claims were either misleading or just plainly untrue. DHS, for instance, says that leading up to the shooting, federal agents were, quote, rammed by vehicles and boxed in by 10 cars. They put a specific number on it, 10 cars. That sounds really serious. But then they file the actual criminal complaint. And what the criminal complaint says is different. 2 cars.
And you can prove that. Okay, so that's an easy discrepancy to verify because you can. You can look at their documents. We've talked about this already. And the point is that they made that up or they were wrong. So maybe they were just mistaken. But 2 to 10, kind of more of an embellishment, right? And that's pretty obvious. But it gets worse. We already talked about it. Let's not forget the many other examples we talked about of the ICE agents opening fire on a car full of a family because they drove away, then lied and said they were hit by the car, and in court admitted that didn't happen. Over and over and over this happens.
Okay, the image in your mind of 10 cars circling a DHS vehicle, very different than 2 cars. DHS also said in that statement that the woman was, quote, armed with a semi-automatic weapon. Okay, that sounds serious, but guess what? In the criminal complaint filed by the U.S. attorney, no mention of her threatening agents with a gun. In fact, the criminal complaint doesn't mention a gun at all.
Now, it happened that they said that, right? They did say that. They did claim that as McLaughlin and plenty of others made it clear she was armed and whatever, and used that to argue that's why they had to engage with their own fire. Okay. But as he says, and you can look up for yourself, as we talked about, that's not in the information. But I argue the reason it was used in the moment was because they looked up and they found that she has an owned carry license, because she does. And that's, you could look it up for yourself. So that was, I think, an effort to go, well, we could use that if we wanted. So if I say it now, if we end up having to push the envelope, we can get away with it by claiming we know. Here's her. So right now, if McLaughlin and Bondi and Noam threw out her license and said, see, she has a gun, we knew it, they would all go, we knew it, you're all lying, even though that's not the case. They didn't make the case because it wasn't actually involved with what happened. You know how the partisan momentum would take over. As we see it every single day.
And third, DHS alleged that the Chicago police left the scene, refused to help federal law enforcement officers secure the area. That's just a bold-faced lie. We know that because there are photos of Chicago police officers at the scene following the shooting. Not only that, there's a video of Chicago officers wiping their eyes after they were tear gassed by federal agents.
Now, that was an overlapping story that we didn't really even cover, where they got tear gassed, I think, accidentally. People argued that it might have been intentional because of their lack of help or whatever, but then later argued that they weren't helping where they should. And it's like, well, you just tear gassed them, so maybe they're reluctant to join in.
DHS statement, which they rush out 3 hours after the shooting to try to justify what happened, it's just filled with misleading and false claims. And it's really disturbing because it's becoming their standard practice. So here's another example. In mid-September, ICE shoots a 38-year-old father of 2 during an attempted arrest. Again, they put out a statement, and the statement claims that the victim is a criminal, illegal alien. Turns out this man has no criminal record. And then there's this video.
Now here's the game right there, which I'm sure you pick up on already, right? Well, he's an illegal alien. If that, in regard to that exact case, I haven't gone through all the details. The point is, if he's illegally here, well, yes, that's a crime, but it's not in the way that they frame it. In fact, it's not even a severe, I forget what the term is now. It's not the kind of crime they describe it as. And but technically it's a crime. Okay. So saying he's an illegal criminal alien, you know, that, like, it's redundant, first of all, but they're trying to stress the idea, trying to make it sound like he has a criminal record. But when pushed, they're going to go, well, he's here illegally. That's a crime. And that's what they do. It's a game they're playing. And on top of that, most of the people that they say they're going after like that, and I mean most, I've seen it myself. They say criminal legal alien, I actually don't think, I pulled off a bunch of stories today for time. There's an example of a guy who's going to show up for his green card appointment, and then they arrest him and send him away. He wasn't even a criminal. They just say he missed a couple of appointments. The guy's literally showing up for his green card appointment, and they arrest him because he missed another appointment. It's like, how do you rationalize that? He's literally showing up to the appointment. It's because they're just trying to get numbers, and they can go criminal because they did. They called him a criminal legal alien. But he wasn't. He was literally, he'd missed an appointment, but he was in line with even in a legality sense. So it's just, we have to be real about this.
Showing an ICE raid that was conducted on an apartment building in Chicago. Yeah. What you see is federal agents rappelling down from a Black Hawk, kicking in doors, they're arresting people. But what you don't see is the U.S. citizens, including military veterans, who were pulled from their beds and detained for hours. These aren't undocumented immigrants. These are
these are, I mean, American citizens sleeping in their beds. Imagine that. You get burst in. Are you okay with that? Because they say, hey, we're going after what we think might be a criminal across the way. I'm not okay with that. That's not how, this is not the reality. Your rights are being violated, both your home, search and seizure, privacy, everything, as well as your, just any number of other constitutional rights in regard to, I mean, the government is invading your private space, is violating your bodily security, is violating your rights, even on top of that, overlapping with speech. These people are shot, like, with accountability, with filming. I mean, it's just over the top. Right, the press, every which way you look at it, the people who are acting like they're saving the country are the ones who are literally dismantling it in front of us. And I'm not trying to say in any way that Chris Murphy, you're trying to save it. I think this is about counterbalance to create the idea of a, rebel and a deep state. And they just play it back against each other the entire time.
U.S. citizens, You don't see in those videos the kids who were reportedly separated from their parents, who were zip tied together and detained in the middle of the night. None of that is in the statement or the videos that you get from the administration. Perhaps the biggest fabrication of all is DHS's insistence that they are only in all these situations targeting what they call, quote, the worst of the worst. Right. When in reality, we've got data that shows that 70%, 7 out of 10 people that ICE is detaining have no criminal convictions. The Department of Homeland Security.
And on top of that, by the way, the other 30% are chock full of people who have parking tickets and missed appointments. And yes, some people who are severe, but the reality is the most severe were the ones that were allowed to go back to El Salvador because they have deals with Bukele, the very people they claim they're going after. You're being played if you haven't caught on by now.
The Trump administration, they are contorting, they are omitting facts in some cases, and in other cases, they are straight up lying in order to support their narrative that these Democratic-led cities and states are war zones. This isn't information, it's propaganda.
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing that they do when given the opportunity, but that doesn't change the fact, if you've caught on by now, that what he said was correct. I mean, again, this is backed up by what I just showed you. It's backed up by the same data that I've been showing you for weeks, for months. The reality of that is not hard to recognize. The sad part is that far too many people who might actually care, who are just being misled, are of the mind that if they say it, therefore the opposite is true. And that's kind of that is the lowest common denominator. It's easiest to just go, well, if it's lack of foresight, right? To pretend like it just has to be one way or the other. That's what they want from all of us, guys. And I think is one of the most obvious examples of how this is falling apart in front of them. And this one is really hard to wrap your mind around. Mother of 8 charges that she was sexually abused by ICE agents. Now remember, we're talking about, in some cases, random people who have zero accountability, like even less so than regular agents, because they've just been like deputized. Bounty hunters and different people that are like tangential to the authority figures, people that have been like desperately seeking authority their whole lives, but never been allowed because they're not mentally, sufficient, or maybe they're a little bit, whatever, like people that don't pass the mental exams who are now going, well, we need people. That's what we're dealing with right now. The lowest of the low, what's the right term? Like bottom of the barrel is the right analogy. So the point is that you people that would abuse that power, especially when looking around and recognizing that literally nobody's being held accountable and that your government is willing to ignore, even lie about the crimes you commit. So a mother of 8 charges an ICE agent with sexually abusing her. She was deported the very next day. An agent engaged in, quote, severe sexual harassment and demanded sexual favors, the report goes. After her story aired on television, she was deported the next day. ICE ignored a judge's emergency order of temporary stay, and she was illegally deported anyway, which, by the way, happens shockingly frequently right now. Lawsuit charges that ICE agents with saying things like, quote, if you're good to me, I'll be good to you. Reina Mendoza is a mother of 8 children, all U.S. citizens living in Sacramento, California. Here's the report.
A Northern California woman who recently filed a civil lawsuit accusing an ICE contractor of sexual harassment has now been deported.
And now her attorneys are questioning the timing. KCRA 3's Andrea Flores is here with what we've learned.
Tonight, her lawyers are telling us her civil case will move forward, and they're hoping to bring her back to the United States. Sylvia Reina Mendoza is a mother of 8 who has lived in the U.S. for nearly 40 years. We spoke with 2 of her children last week after she filed a civil lawsuit in Sacramento County. Reina Mendoza was in the country illegally. Her status required her to be monitored by BI Incorporated, which contracts with ICE. Now, according to the lawsuit, her specialist, Luis Ruiz, sent her sexually explicit text messages and videos. Now, the lawsuit says when she reported that behavior to a supervisor, no action was taken. Our story aired on Thursday night, and her lawyer says she was deported by Friday morning.
It's obviously very, very suspicious because all along the defendants that we are suing have been working very hard to cover up the sexual harassment. We're still investigating this. We want all the facts to come out, and we want the individuals who have harmed her to be brought to justice.
Her immigration attorneys believe she was illegally deported, claiming she had an emergency stay on her case. We did reach out to federal immigration officials, and we have not yet heard back. Meantime, the company, BI Incorporated, says it takes all allegations of sexual harassment very seriously and will thoroughly investigate all of those complaints.
I guess people may be wondering, though, how this affects the case. Now that she's been deported, what does that mean for the lawsuit?
Yeah, that's a great question. Of course, the attorneys are vowing that this case will continue, even if she has to be part of these proceedings virtually, since she is not here in the United States. The defendants have not yet filed a response in the case yet, but we will keep following this story.
Yeah, I mean, highly unlikely this will go anywhere because no one's here to, it's going to be put aside. The sad reality, though, I mean, look, to be objective, could she be lying? Of course she could, right? But and we should be considering that, just like in reverse, we would question the claims, like from Israel, for example. Like it would logically make sense that she would put out a claim like this in order to try to, manipulate the process. Okay, but there's an ongoing effort to try to make this evidence come out, which adds some level of legitimacy to why would they be continuing to push this? Why would they be paying for it if there's nothing there? But on top of that, we have to understand how much this, in any situation like this, historically, this always happens to some degree. Not to say it's okay in any sense. It should be sussed out and exposed. But my case is the rapid deportation, I think, makes the case for it. So she is literally accusing them of sexual abuse, and then she gets rapidly deported the next day. I mean, you guys can think what you want about that. It's not definitive, not as much as some of the others are, but it really does make it unnerving, the amount of power these people have. And clearly with what we've already seen, that they are capable of doing something just like this. And they're going to continue. So I'll wait for the lawsuit. Now, last couple points on this with what we just saw, right? About like even the woman charging the allegation, the problem seems to be more than anything, they don't have any way to identify these people. Right? I was sexual. And I take it back. I'm thinking of the other case. In this one, she knows the person because she's dealing with them as the guy, right? But I argue that's why they rapidly deported her, because there was a way to identify. But the case before that, which is where mine was, and pretty much every one of them, they're masked up, right? They've got the gaiter on. You can't see their face. They won't identify their badge number. They won't give you anything. They won't give you a warrant. Okay. So nobody knows what's going on. So what do we have to do? Things like this. If that, if not, they have to, but people choose to do something. This is one avenue, which is to go, okay, well, they're breaking the law. So let's do what we can, which is to identify the cars that we can see and write down their license plate numbers and the car make, right? And you can see, as it literally says, updated list of ICE vehicles seen today. Seen, right? Not like they're hacking some website, which, by the way, wouldn't even change the reality that is public license plates. These people are just desperately stupid right now. And what's funny about it, Libs of TikTok was the one screeching about lefties doing this kind of thing all day long, right? It was just so funny how now they've turned into exactly what they call out in some of the most cartoonish ways, like doxing people working at Home Depot because they made a bad joke about Donald Trump being shot, or Charlie Kirk for that matter. They are exactly like the left they so loathe. How embarrassing. She says, Illinois State Representative Margaret Croak has sent out an email doxing, not even close, ICE, and listed their car details and license plate numbers. Now, here's the point. Did she look this up? Had she looked it up, she'd find out that it's not a crime. Does she care? So it's either that she's not, like this journalist, the new media, is unable to do the smallest due diligence, or she knows and she doesn't care and is willing to literally lie to you, like, the Epstein Phase 1 files that she was a part of that they lied about to this very day. And now we're calling you something for wanting to look forward. And Massey's a rhino. It's lazy stuff. But it says she's putting target on agents' backs, helping illegals evade arrest. Okay, by showing the people's license plate numbers. This is absolutely disgraceful. Charge her. Again, these people are ridiculous. Here's Grok. Is it against the law for Americans to know and share the car details and license plate numbers of public officials, police, or ICE officers? No, it's not against the law in the United States for Americans to know or share car details, make, model, car, license plate numbers of public officials, police officers, immigration customs. By the way, you can look it up for yourself. As long as the information is obtained legally, right? As it says, observed in the public, which is what it was. And this is what I found interesting. Shared without intent to harass, threaten, or incite harm. Now, that becomes what they're trying to use. They're using this to try to make, that's not the reality. The numbers they threw out, have we already forgotten that the No Kings protest, they spent 3 weeks telling you it was going to burn the country down? Zero. And that's in no way for me to say that lefty or anybody in political partisanship is not capable of causing things like that. Usually it's the government abusing all of us, by the way, but it was none. In fact, 3 out of 4 were examples of Republicans attacking people protesting. It's not to say that it's only them. It's just a funny thing to think about while they go right back to going, there is a lefty maniac and everything's a hyperbolic fever pitch. So in this case, what they're doing is not a crime unless you can somehow prove they're doing it with the intent to hurt somebody. But then you can prove that the numbers they put out about the harm is not even real. And in most cases, the worst you can see is people pushing somebody or throwing something, which sure, if you're willing to charge that with everything else going on, go for it. You can charge them with that. License plates are considered public information under the First Amendment with no reasonable expectation of privacy. Do you think they even cared to look this up? She doesn't care, guys. She is a very dishonest player in this. So too are a lot of them. Now, deportations. Basically asking what deportations of U.S. citizens. Just to see what it said. Now, you know about the children. We talked about this. Now, this was a very dishonest overlap. They claimed that they wanted that, and it later came out, which I proved to you myself, that the family who was still in the United States were pleading with them to, they literally took the phone out of the hand of the mother to ensure these children were not allowed to go back to the family that was in the United States. This came out very publicly. And they, 2-year-old, deported them, 3-year-old citizen, a 4-year-old with cancer. And they lied about all of this, guys. Now, that's not what I'm going to get into now. What I want you to see is the news story. American citizen, but it's a nuanced situation, but the judge is the one that ruled on this. And that matters. Regardless of whether even I disagree, the standing is what that ruling is until something else changes. So, Alabama resident, claiming U.S. citizenship via naturalized father, which the judge upheld in this case, detained June 2025. Federal judge blocked deportation, citing, quote, substantial claim and inherent harm. So 2 things. The claim is to the citizenship. Harm is to where they want to send him. It says ICE deported him to Laos anyway. Defying the judge's order, just like every other case we've talked about. Right, I shouldn't say it like that, but Garcia and the deportation of the woman, they're just rushing this stuff through. Now it says DHS insists it's not a mistake and refuses to return him. They know how this works. Garcia, I think, only went this way because of the withholding of removal. Had they not had that, they would have still been we all would have been like due process. They broke the law. But it would have been ignored, I argue. It's the fact that they violated even Trump's administration's withholding of removal from 2019 and sent him to the one place because they were just so rapidly rushing to send him to a Bukele, because I think of the point we made about the deals they've made. They were so quick to rush him off that it didn't look further, I guess. And all they do is bring him back, send him somewhere else, which now they're trying to do, but now the due process has become the focal point. In this case, they sent him to Laos. Guys, he's not from Laos. That doesn't make any sense. This is the same problem, and it seems like no one's even paying attention right now. ICE deported an Alabama man, this is from 29th of October, who claims U.S. citizenship. DHS said it wasn't a mistake. We don't want him back. Alabama claims he has U.S. citizenship, was deported to Laos, and it says despite the court order blocking that. It's Chantilla, 44 years old, born at Thai refugee camp, but has lived in the United States since he was an infant. That stands for something, in my opinion, in regard to just whether they're going after the worst of the worst when you're picking out people who have a lifetime of examples of being immersed and intertwined with the society. Having a job, just everything. It says he gained citizenship as a child when his father was naturalized, making him eligible for derivative citizenship under immigration law at the time. Immigrant ICE officers arrested him on 18th of June in Alabama, where he had been living, and moved him to a newly launched detention facility in Louisiana. They're using Louisiana is the most pliable with regard to what they're doing, and it seems to be blinding themselves to the illegalities of a lot of it. So they seem to kind of functioning through Louisiana primarily. And it says on October 23rd, a federal judge blocked ICE from deporting him while he was challenging his arrest, his detention. It says, but they deported him the very next day. Doesn't that sound very similar? Right? That's exactly like the woman and her claims. They are literally deporting people, in this case, a U.S. citizen, because they know what he's going to say. That's how I would read this. This should shock the nation, said a legal director of the ACLU in Louisiana, which is representing this person in court. The deportation of an individual with a substantial claim to U.S. citizenship represents a catastrophic failure of the immigration system. Now, it was a deliberate choice. I think that's clear. And a flagrant violation of constitutional rights, which it would even if he was not a U.S. citizen. His legal team is now exploring all legal options for his return. The restraining order blocking ICE from deporting him was not served to the agency until after he was already on the plane. I call BS. This is exactly what they tried to pull with Garcia. They got caught and they pushed it anyway. Now I think they're going to go for it again. I think the court system and everybody is exhausted by having to deal with this. I think they're going to win out. I hate to say that, but I think that's how it's going to go. This person is an American citizen by the judge's ruling that was sent to Laos, and I bet you it falls on the wayside. Because right now, they'll have to go through all of this again, all of it, demanding he be sent back. And so it basically says they claimed, oh, they got the order as he was flying overhead. Well, just like last time, then send him back. It's exactly the same situation. And it says, according to Homeland Security, Tricia McLaughlin, the one just lied. She seems to be the one they tried out to lie because she's like the lowest on the totem pole. And it says, McLaughlin said to a statement to The Independent that he had, quote, no right to be in this country. That's not true at all, by the way. An immigration court judge ordered his removal in 2006, according to McLaughlin. 20 years later, he tried a Hail Mary attempt to remain in our country by claiming he was a U.S. citizen. 20 years later? That's the Hail Mary? Why would, it doesn't make any sense to me. It says, I know it's shocking to the media, but criminal illegal aliens lie all the time. Right now, more than ever, more than anything they've said, you can tell the liar in the conversation is literally the DHS. Yeah, people lie. Everybody does, including people trying to not be sent to another country or deported because they're here illegally. But you guys have lied in vast majority of the cases because most of these people aren't criminals. Under President Trump and Nome, if you break the law, you will face consequences. Criminal illegal aliens are not welcome in the United States. Oh, they're so big and tough when they're talking to people that blindly accept their lies. But citizens, regardless of criminal history, cannot be deported, it says. Court records reviewed by The Independent show he filed a petition for his release shortly after his June arrest, but he did not pay the filing fee before the deadline. Oh, what a violent terrorist, rapist, murdering criminal. The case was dismissed and he refiled October 16th. In her order blocking his removal, the judge said his substantial claim of citizenship means he, quote, cannot be deported or held in immigration detention. So even if you disagree, even if you want to go radical judge, like there exists on both sides of the paradigm, she made the ruling and they don't care. He lays out the legal framework for his derivation of citizenship through his naturalized father and demonstrates how each prong of the requirement was met, the judge wrote. This presents serious questions regarding the legality of his detention and immediate imminent deportation. So she's saying that literally going through the checklist of like it says, of the prong of the requirements met, that he met them. And she rules he's a citizen in this case, or has the substantial claim to it, which means they can't deport him. I just think that's super important. This is like an inch closer than we were before in going after U.S. citizens entirely. The judge noted the inherent and obvious harm in deporting a U.S. citizen. His removal raises urgent questions about just how many other people, potentially including other U.S. citizens, have been wrongly deported because our immigration system does not require legal representation of individuals placed behind bars at jails masquerading as immigration detention centers. So, I could have titled the article today as U.S. citizen gets deported, but I didn't want to be misrepresentative. Because this is, legally speaking, exactly what this is. But the reality is that the claim would seem to mean something different to most people. But even though this is the same point in principle, this is the same. This is what we're talking about. I feel like this is alarmingly going in this direction. Homeland Security's refusal to return him, where he had never lived in the first place, which clearly matters, echoes other high-profile immigration cases at the center of Donald Trump's mass deportation. There is no legal precedent of sending people to some random country. It's just, this is so wildly outside of the norm or the legal international reality. They don't care. Louisiana, which holds thousands of ICE detainees, has been central to Trump's administration's deportation plans. ICE runs 9 detention centers in that state, 9, which holds as many as 7,000 people at a given time, probably 20,000, seeing as how they max these things out twice over what they're supposed to have. The administration is also seeking to expand deportations to so-called third countries where immigrants have no claim of citizenship or connections. Right. So they're learning from Garcia, and they're probably sending him from one to the other. like just lost in multiple countries' processes and that's gone. See, these are criminals, guys. There's no way around that. They're knowingly trying to do this to human beings who aren't breaking the law. What else do you call that? Now, I'm not even talking about this case, and this would be one of them, but my point is we just went over so many cases of people who are being taken advantage of because they don't like what they're doing, not breaking the law. Sort of like Donald Trump's administration or just, the government choosing to go after you because of speech. Both sides of the paradigm. Things that they don't like that you're saying. Laos now appears to join several African nations where immigration officials are sending detainees. American citizen. Now, shouldn't be surprising, you probably already know, the rise of Stephen Miller, the architect of Trump's hardline immigration policy. This random advisor who somehow has more power than Marco Rubio, which that's been pretty widely reported that he's basically overruling Marco Rubio as one of the, Rubio having two of the leading highest positions in the government. And this guy, unelected power structure, which by the way, that's the deep state part, the unelected power structure, not necessarily secret, not necessarily people that we don't know exist or, this is the partisan game of this shadow. There is parts like that. There are parts like that, but you must understand what it means. It's just the unelected power structure, people that can wield power through companies, through foreign power connections, who very much influence policy and can stay so and continue to influence policy well beyond any kind of official policies, official declaration, like that you're a senator and you've got so many years to do so. They can do it as long as they want. Advisor here, team over there. It's the unelected ongoing power structure. It's nebulous. The game of trying to make it one group or one ongoing thing, that's what the team sport partisans do. Some of them buy it. The point? He represents something exactly like that, and he is clearly guiding these policies that are destroying this country. Now, overlapping, thinking about what we just showed you, what they're the extent they're taking to go after American citizens, people who are here legally, people who aren't breaking the law at all, just in any number of overlaps, but people like the U.S. veteran, Green Beret, or rather not Green Beret, U.S. veteran, U.S. citizen, George Reitz, or a number of U.S. citizens that we just shown you were detained, even deported, right? Well, here's a news story you might not have seen. 19-year-old son of Israeli diplomat Eli Gil deliberately ran over a U.S. police officer in Florida. He then engaged in high-speed pursuit, endangering civilian lives. You can watch it right here. There he is. You saw this story, didn't you? All charges were dropped. Yeah, nothing new. This is not a new story. Just like the Saudi Arabia overlap, same way. Or how about this one that you know of? Right. So think about this. This is an immigrant, guys. He's a foreign citizen. Okay, he's an Israeli citizen who comes to the United States, kills a U.S. police officer. Get him out of here. Right. But you sneer wrong at an ICE agent. Oh my God, put that American citizen in jail for 3 weeks. Seems like a discrepancy, doesn't it? Disparity. Okay, how about this one? You saw this one. Israeli government official charged with soliciting a 15-year-old girl. Yeah, remember this one? Tom Alexandrovich. Well, guess what they did? They dropped the charges. They sent him back home. Nothing has ever happened since. Yeah, how about, the Epstein files and all these overlapping points, or ICE agents molesting people? Who knows if there's connective points to it. The point is, this is what they're doing with people from foreign countries. If you're an American citizen, they're going to go after you. How dare you videotape an ICE agent? Overlapping that, Suppressed News reports as of the 30th, a Texas man named Adam was swatted after posting online criticism of Israel, leading the Texas DPS and Bell County Sheriff's Office to show up at his home. The officer told him on his Ring camera, "We're here because of the comments you made about Israel." He says, is it free speech when Israel can just send your local cops to your door for posts they don't like? Think about that. So where the overlap comes into play, where like the Palestine, they're all Muslim jihadists, foreign invaders, and the left, and there's this mashing together of everything. Well, in this case, it's the same kind of overlap, where this doesn't have to be only about immigration, but it does begin to paint a problem when you can see what it's really being aimed at, especially when you then include that it seems that American citizens are more and more and more in the crosshairs. And now you've got people of your own local police forces coming up and going, hey, you said the wrong thing about Israel. That's what you care about? Not the American citizens being arrested. But you see where this goes? I'm not going to make the biggest focus today, but you cannot decouple this part of the conversation from what we're talking about. I'm not trying to overfocus on Israel. This is in the conversation. And they are very much a part of what's happening. Here, just a daily reminder. So here's an American citizen, by the way, a third-generation American born in Florida who's currently held in Israel's prisons. So not only do they not care about American citizens being deported, being arrested, being held without charge, Israel is able to arrest American citizens from the West Bank who are third-generation born in America in Florida. And he is still being held in prison. Over 7 months, he's lost 20 pounds, he's got scabies and all sorts of other things because that's what they do to people in their prisons. Not Donald Trump, not Marco Rubio, not Pam Bondi, not Kash Patel, not Dan Bongino, not any of the supposed America First politicians. A ton of Democrats. I'm not trying to say good on them. I'm not saying like they're the good, they're the bad. But I will say good on them for calling it out. But I think they called it out because it's in their interest to play against the other side right now. But who cares? What, it was like 13 Democrats all called, it was 27, called on Donald Trump to do something about him being arrested. I haven't heard a peep. Really America first when you allow American citizen to rot in a foreign prison because it's inconvenient, right? America first. Well, let's talk about that overlap. So in this country, we now have Israel, or rather ICE, using Israeli tech to spy on Americans. While we have them being accosted for saying bad things about Israel and while American citizens are stuck in Israeli prisons. This is Anthony, I think it's Aguilar. He's the Green Beret U.S. veteran citizen who was in Israel, occupied Palestine, and literally witnessed ISIS-linked gangs that they call the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation executing civilians. I mean, I played them for you. He does not pull his punches. They literally were being ordered to snipe children, starving, torture. I mean, it's insane. And not going to play those today. They've been played to death. They just act like he made it all up. That's the best they could do. Plenty of other whistleblowers. He is now here speaking out about the ICE tech overlap. He witnessed this himself. This needs to be important. He says, wake up, people. ICE agents train in Israel. They are back here with the same tactics. This is the same story, guys.
Look at what's happening every day. I've been there. I have trained with them. I have been to Israel where ICE agents and DEA agents and other three-letter agencies train with the Israelis, with the gendarmerie and the Israeli police force, training with them. And they bring those tactics back here. The oppression that we export, we bring it right back here. Look around. We are the ones suffering. Children in Gaza are suffering. Fathers, mothers, families are suffering. Every day on TV, we see a Palestinian father carrying their dead child. And little Marco and Ambassador Huckabee and our president make jokes and celebrate. A ceasefire? What a joke. The ceasefire wasn't even in effect for 30 seconds before Israel dropped another bomb. And what did they say? We can get away with it. Wake up, people. Every day we pay Israel our tax dollars so they can continue to bomb and kill unarmed civilians. We bomb boats off the coast of Venezuela. We blow up Colombians in fishing boats and say, oops. If you don't think that won't come to your neighborhood, think again. I have seen it. It is coming. ICE agents train in Israel, and they bring that back here, and they bring the same tactics. You don't have to read the secret files to see what's happening on our streets every day. For all you that serve your country, all of us that have served our country, for those of you out here in uniform serving your country, if you're a YouTube influencer, Israel will pay you $7,000 per post. You know who they pay that with? Our tax dollars. Our government makes us stupid, and we should not put up with it.
I hate when I miss that. I was trying to edit that out, edit the end part out. I mean, just think about this, guys. Like, he not only seen what they're doing, But he's now bringing the message back and going, look, it's coming. And it's not some, hyperbolic, like, if you don't stop it now, you'll be next, which you hear that often, right? This is clearly part of that. But, ignore the point is, regardless of the use of that, what he's trying to say is this is not some trope. This is the reality that what we can literally see, like we've talked about Israel and IDF training, or rather police training with them. Now we've got ICE training with them. Now we've got them using the tech that they're training using on Palestinians in a genocide. There's no way that's okay with it should be okay with anybody. Now, this one I actually just realized that I forgot that I didn't finish going through this. But for that point, maybe we'll go through it more in the future. But sometimes I do is I'm researching and I catch something and I jump to the next, which I'll show you in a second. Then I forget to go back. But this article is important. Connects. We've talked about this a lot anyway. ICE will use AI to surveil social media. And it says immigration. And I always want to skip that for some reason. ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, has inked a new $5.7 million contract. This is from October 26th. So we've already talked about a lot of these $1 million contracts with Israel Tech. It's just coming out every which way right now. It says a $5.7 million contract for, surprise, surprise, AI-driven social media surveillance software. Why would they need that? They're going after this country. This is the new Gestapo International Police Force. If you can't see that building by now, I don't know what else to tell you. This is aimed at every American, like the Palantir surveillance and everything else. Why would they need to surveil all of social media with AI? By the way, they're already doing that. This is just the expansion of this program under the guise of going after the people you think you're aimed at. And this is according to federal procurement records. It says, in the latest move in the agency's ongoing quest to build out a social media surveillance dragnet, the 5-year contract with government technology middleman Carasoft Technology, made public in September, provides ICE licenses for a product called Signal Labs, a social media monitoring platform used by the Israeli military and the Pentagon. Now, I already covered these in particular, but I just want to reiterate this. Maybe that's why I decided to go any further. But the point is that a lot of it's the same way. ICE bought a social media surveillance bot on October 23rd by the Lever, and you could read further into it to understand the Israel and Pentagon connection. Drop site news, same point. Civil liberties advocates warn it will likely be used to target immigrants and activists for their speech, which is a crime. Simple as that. It's unconstitutional. But on top of that, this is Carasoft first. Now, here's what I want to stress. From the beginning about the different companies and the tech surveillance overlap, like that, this again, remember, watch these. If you didn't see the beginning of the show, watch these alongside each other. This is an open admission that something like the pager terror attack in Lebanon is potentially primed in every other country. And Israel has more than made it clear there is no line they will not cross. This is the ex-Mossad agent saying in every country imaginable, they have a Lebanon pager setup already going. Equipment, technology. I'll play it when we get back to it again. So here, the point, or like the Carbine overlap, or Eric Prince and what is her name? Letitia Jane? No, that's the politician. I forget her name now. I'll grab it real quick. The article that I've grabbed more than once. Now I'm blanking on it. That's funny. It's the Prince and the Spy. That's what it was. It's right here. So I'll include the article because it's about the same point. But simply all I'm saying is that they put Eric Prince in the front of this company to say it's an American company, but it's really an Israeli intelligence company. It's a very, very lazy. It only works because the government allows it or is told to allow it because they're not in control. I mean, that's the only way I would look at this, because the reality is, just like we were saying before, right? So you have this company. See, I did close something on accident. There was another one too. Anyway, the company is Carasoft, right? So if you look into it, hey, American company, Virginia, run by American. Okay. But then you look into everything they use. Well, guess what? Every single piece of their company, this part of it was founded by Israeli counter security experts. This part founded in Tel Aviv, Israel, and is run in Israel. This part of it founded in 1999 in Israel, but its core R&D is in Israel today still. Here, this part is founded in 2015 in New York by Israeli entrepreneurs, and significant R&D is currently in Israel. But it's an American company, guys, and it's totally not run by Israeli intelligence. That's the whole thing, guys. That's the whole thing. And my point was, you can go into the other one too. The Zagnod or whatever the other one, same kind of thing. Used by Israeli intelligence. what's crazy about it is how often this is the case. So I'm going to play this clip again, just because this is the from one of the previous shows. I couldn't find this again, but this is just the guy breaking it down for you. Just a quick clip to make it clear that they'll train it on Palestinians and bring it home for you. And what we're seeing is ICE now using these. We'll show you the other app I briefly pointed to earlier, that they're now going to say you're not allowed to deny, which is not constitutional. And that's an app built by Israel that sends it back to Israel, like everything else we're talking about. This is happening right now.
Killing thing I've seen responding to these immigration raids. I'm an immigrant rights attorney, and usually I'm a pretty optimistic guy. I don't get scared easily. I love watching horror movies. Over the past 6 months, I've seen some really disturbing stuff. At one location, people hid when I showed up, and I still found them using a thermal drone that detects body heat.
If you don't remember, by the way, this is like a cut together thing where he's reading comments and so on, and so that's not him. He's simply saying that's how one of the ICE agents found them, and all this is very documented.
Where was this technology first tested? By Israel in occupied Palestine. When people get taken by ICE, they often refuse to say their names. So ICE identifies them using a facial recognition technology. Where was this tech first used? By Israel in occupied Palestine. When people refuse to let ICE search their phones, ICE will plug their phones into this box and it unlocks their phone. Where was this tech first used? By Israel in occupied Palestine.
Remember that whole big push during Apple and the FBI and the cracking of the phone and this whole big thing about how much privacy mattered? It's funny how they don't even care. Didn't even have a blip in the conversation today. Hey, just hacking your phone, no big deal. Bad guys. That's how far we've fallen from that conversation.
The amount of dystopian tech that the US government has taken from Israel to use in its own country is terrifying. And this is why freeing Palestine.
So now, after all of that, here's Eric Doherty cheering on the fact that Tom Homan has confirmed that he's personally working with Stephen Miller. Oh, I feel so much better. To skyrocket deportation numbers. What does that even mean? What do you mean skyrocket? Like it's something, it's just because you just, I mean, it inherently suggests that that's just something they can turn the dial on. So why aren't you doing that now? Aren't you supposed to be claiming that you're going after everybody as hard as you can? So now you're going to just turn that up? I mean, look, if what we already know is they're scooping up American citizens or deported one, and I mean, all that means is that's going to get far, far worse. If this is now and he's going to make it worse, how else do you make sense of that? And these people, like usual, go, yay! The team, and everything they're doing is unconstitutional, illegal, and literally destroys what they pretend they're fighting for. They don't care though. These are blind followers. But I mean, maybe we should make fun of them for following somebody as ridiculous as Tom Homan. But overall, the point is that these people or anybody like this, if they think they're fighting for something like this country, then they have lost the plot. Everything these people are doing, like, same as the COVID-19, the government is to create a circumstance where we call for what they would otherwise want to use against us. People like this, whether they're knowingly doing it or paid to do it or just here to watch it all burn, you have to be smart enough to see through it, everybody individually. Now here, as this ramps up, you can't refuse to be scanned by ICE's facial recognition app, their own documents say. I mean, that alone, even just because they have this, oh, damn it. It's a good thing I have it highlighted because I would have just lost it right there. Oh, no, I didn't. That's interesting. Never seen that happen. Anyway, the point is the documents, you can read through this for yourself. The point clearly is that that's wrong. No matter what, right? You can't say you're not allowed to refuse a biometric scan. I mean, guys, that goes wildly out of bounds. Like, you can't, they're not allowed to look at your phone unless you give them permission, despite them not caring about that. To argue that they're allowed to, which I'll show you, seize your biometric data for 15 years, you realize all this means, all this really amounts to for me, maybe they don't even know it, to the government, is a database. It's only one part. There's 1,000 things happening right now, but this is them scared. So they're going to run up to you in the street and force you to do this, even if you're a U.S. citizen, and be like, you're not allowed to say no. Okay, good. Now we say you're here legally, move along. So even if that's what they believe they're doing, that just put your iris scans in their database for 15 years, for really forever. Let's read it. There's nothing about this. This is aligning with anything it's not constitutional. It's not legal under U.S. law. I mean, this is a violation of human rights. So it says Immigration and Customs Enforcement does not let people decline to be scanned by its new facial recognition app. Just one more example of stepping in the direction of everything anti-America, screaming America, which the agency uses a verify which the agency uses to verify a person's identity and their immigration status, according to an internal Department of Homeland Security document obtained by 404 Media. The document also says any face photos taken by the app, called Mobile Fortify, I'm sure you won't be shocked to find what that connects to, will be stored for 15 years, including those of U.S. citizens. Why would that be the case? Why would it be necessary to store American citizens' Facebook? Well, I think you can piece that together. That's largely what this is about, at least in my opinion, from the core point of the app. Maybe even ICE agents don't even know. But it says on Wednesday, 404 Media reported that both ICE and Customs and Border Protection are scanning people's faces in the streets. Border Protection in the streets. Yeah, that makes sense, right? Border is now everywhere in the country because immigrants, right? Lefties in the streets to verify citizenship. Isn't that just papers, please, with biometrics? Yep, totally is. Rights don't matter because bad thing. ICE does not provide the opportunity for individuals to decline. Does not provide the opportunity? That's authoritarian as hell. And consent to the collection of use of biometrics. You don't get to say no. Sure sounds like America, doesn't it? More so than people realize, but that's not the point. The document says CBP is supporting ICE as a technical service provider to carry out requirements in President Trump's executive order, protecting the American people. Right, because executive orders are what guide the day, legally speaking? No. They're not even, I mean, this is what I keep getting mad about, guys. They're sprawling policy that goes way outside the bounds of executive authority just because Trump wrote something and signed it. And now you have things that are affecting every people in foreign countries. It says, although the intended purpose of in case you've missed that point in the past, executive orders legally only apply to the executive branch. You should know that by now, but it doesn't seem to matter. Although the intended purpose of the Mobile Fortify application is to identify aliens who are removable from the United States, users may use Mobile Fortify to collect information in identifiable form about individuals regardless of citizenship or immigration status, meaning they can scoop it up from anybody. It is conceivable that a photo taken by an agent using the Mobile Fortify mobile application could be that of someone other than an alien, including U.S. citizens. Well, it's quite obvious, seeing as how they're using it to check that if that's the case, meaning they're going to just arbitrarily, which, by the way, backwardly proves to you that they're just profiling. If they need to use this to check to see if you're an alien and they didn't know in the first place, that means they're doing that already and going up and saying, let me see your ID. It's just, and then they just lie about it, which we already proved pretty clearly. And it says the ICE agents do not know an individual's citizenship at the time of the initial encounter and will use the Mobile Fortify mobile application to determine or verify an individual's identity and confirm that they are a match to the Fortify the border hot list, basically to their Fortify app database. And it says, if this is super important, if a subject's photo doesn't match one of those on the hot list, no additional information will be returned, according to the document. And further, even if the photo does not provide a match, CBS saves, it's actually further down, but this whole part, CBS saves the new photographs and fingerprints taken by the Mobile Fortify. Even if you don't need it, even if you're verified to be an American citizen, it says, and retained for 15 years, forever, like we should know by now. And it says, ICE will take no action on individuals who are not a match to the hot list, unless operational circumstances indicate other violations of law, which gives them the opening to do what they want, I argue. But it says, ICE officials have told us that an apparent biometric match, this is the point, by Mobile Fortify is in their minds a definitive determination of a person's status, and that an ICE officer may ignore evidence of American citizenship, including a birth certificate, if the app says the person is an alien. So you know what this means? I think you can piece it together pretty clearly. They, as the government, as the power structure, have long ago shifted entirely into digital world, into biometrics, into the paper stuff. That's for us to feel like we're still there. They're telling you, we don't care. Birth certificate, driver's license means nothing. If we have your biometrics that prove that you're there, then it doesn't matter. Of course, never in the world have we had a technological mistake or discrepancy or deliberate misrepresentation. That's never happened before. So now suddenly you're a Garcia character, and then someone goes in and alters the computer system and they go, nope, there's a biometric match. Too bad. Who cares about the rights? Who cares about the documentation? Are we going to pretend like that's not exactly what these people would do based on what we just saw? This is terrifying. And this is what gets into the technocratic overlap. Now, had I tried to include that part of the show today, it'd have been 17 hours. The point, though, is to recognize and try to continue the mindset of what we've been talking about. And this is that. And it's very clearly connected to Israel and all the stuff we've talked about. This is the kind of globalist, technocratic, Zionist agenda. And it says, ICE using a mobile biometrics app in ways its developers at CBP never intended or tested is a frightening, repugnant, and unconstitutional attack on Americans' rights and freedoms. 100% agree. It's just wild to me. So now that is definitive. Your documentation otherwise means nothing to them. That's the hugest point to me. Now, considering just this other one. Oh, you know what? I already removed it. That's okay. But so just for those that haven't seen this tweet, the bottom line is he's literally telling you that they have technology in every government in the world. Let me just go grab real quick. Oh, no, you know what? I've got it down here. And then we'll finish with the Venezuela point.
This is in Gaza.
Surprises?
Yeah.
Like you mean intelligence surprises?
Pages, walkie-talkies. Do you know how many treated equipment do we have in these countries? You don't. I do.
You mean booby-trapped equipment?
Not only booby-trapped.
And spying.
Manipulated equipment. All right?
In which countries are you talking about?
All the countries that you can imagine.
And of course, he goes on to make the clear point that we're saying the same thing as the pager attack in this clip. And so almost every country you can imagine. Think about how terrifying that is with what we just went over. Right? So they're literally telling you, I think it's a threat. I think that is the same as saying, like, you have a piece of Israel in your pockets. And the idea is that we're showing you, like, if you do not back us to the end, this is what will happen. Sadly, that's what I believe. So, one last part about the citizenship overlap relates to Stephen Miller, which relates very clearly to the Venezuela overlap because, surprise, surprise, Stephen Miller is taking a leading role on the Venezuelan drug boats. Weird, right? But here is an important clip for you to see. Stephen Miller's wife, and I'm not a fan of Cenk Uygur. I honestly, my gut tells me that he's kind of recognizing the opening like Marjorie Taylor Greene to play the right side of this conversation, or I just flatly disagree and I think he's dishonest in other places, but he's right about this one. You can decide. I just don't have a high opinion of him. The point is, regardless of that, he's been making the rounds on the Piers Morgan circuit and is very much doing a great job in this. I just want to make it clear about where I see there's a lot of opportunism. My point is always, though, is that it's still right. So we shouldn't, shy away from going correct. As opposed to, the point is that I think sometimes people use the truth to get ahead, which good. Just acknowledge that. Just be like, that's what I think, but at the same time, correct. That's my opinion on it. I think we need to start showing average people or politicians or anybody that they benefit far more by just being honest, even if that's not what they want to do. Even if they're the worst person in the world, they just recognize that that's what most people want. Like, I think that's the obvious. I think we've seen that flipped. If it ever was like the reverse. But so overall, you have her with Cenk Uygur and a few others. And again, Cenk Uygur is rightly calling her out in the correct way. I back up everything he's saying in this. And then she literally threatens him with deportation. I mean, we need to see that this is something that is so far, they know. It's not like they're secretly thinking they're doing the right thing. These people are of the mind. There's one of two ways I look at it. Either they know they're very, very criminal and just wielding that power, or they are partly absorbed in the narrative and they think they're fighting this lefty, dangerous terrorist group and that this is what's necessary. Either way, they're doing the wrong thing. And it seems to be very clear. They're violating rights. They're breaking the law. It's not because bad guy, therefore those don't matter. It's the same as always. The principle is the most important. So Glenn says, threatening to have your husband deport an American citizen because he criticized you on a TV debate, and more so because he criticized the foreign country you love so deeply, is about as twisted as an authoritarian a mindset as you'll find. Now, here's the clip, the longer version of it. Daniel McAdams says, Katie Miller claims that Cenk Uygur accusing the Miller family of being liars is coded language that they hate Jews. She's insinuating that Jews are liars. Is she insinuating Jews are liars? Maybe the bigot on the panel is not Cenk. The point is, now actually, I think this had both of them. I thought it did. If not, I'll play the other one again and we come back to it. The point was that he says you guys are lying, right? Like, Miller lies like he's breathing, and that's very obvious. And she immediately takes that. Did you hear? He said Jews lie. Like, that's how clumsy it really is. I don't understand how you think that's going to connect with people, or if it's just like blunt force, propaganda. I don't know. I think it's this one right here. I wanted to play the other one first. Here, let me just do it just in case. Hold on one sec. I want you to hear this first in case. I thought it was the same clip, but I'm starting to think it might be doubled up. So it's very short, but let's play this one first, where he's, where she's basically saying, you better make sure your immigration information, because he's, I guess, here, I'll split play. The bottom line is that she's threatening that he better have his immigration papers in line, because if not, they're going to have a look at it. And, it's very obvious weaponization of the reality. $10 seconds long.
Hold on. So
you better
what
check your
happened in the
citizenship
Holocaust and
application
all
and
the
hope
pogroms
everything was
and
legally
all the
and correct.
pogroms.
It's hard to hear because he's yelling over her. She says, you better check your citizenship documentation because, and she goes on.
Hold on. So
you better
what
check your
happened in the
citizenship
Holocaust and
application
all
and
the
hope
pogroms
everything was
and
legally
all the
and correct.
pogroms were
Because you'll be just
disgusting.
like Ilhan
That
Omar
doesn't
coming
mean
in.
that Israel.
See, think about this. Like, to hear, it's hard to hear, but what she's saying is you better check your deportation.
Hold on. So
you better
what
check your
happened in the
citizenship
Holocaust and
application
all
Your citizenship application.
and hope everything was
and
legally
all the
and correct.
Okay, so to make sure, so like way back when, like he didn't do that today, right? That was a long time ago. And she's saying, you better check your citizenship application and hope that there was no mistakes. Like, so the idea that you could go back after somebody's been given citizenship and be like, oh, wait, you misrepresented this or that. Like, what if your opinions changed over the years? Like, that's the claim of saying that if they would have told us they were a Palestinian supporter, then we wouldn't have let them in. That's not how the law works, guys. And they're lazy. The point is that she's literally letting the cat out of the bag. I mean, Trump and Rubio have made similar claims, but not in the middle of a debate when somebody is calling you out and you basically threaten deportation. I mean, she clearly seems to think she's justified. That's pretty embarrassing. By the way, why is she even on this panel? What does Stephen Miller's wife have to do with it? I mean, let me know. Does she have some kind of standing in the conversation? I don't know. Frankly, I don't care. But here's the next clip. And this one is it's just hard to watch.
Is it that every time someone wants to criticize Mamdani, it immediately comes back to the Jews and the anti-Israel movement instead of actually talking about his viewpoints, which is that
Nobody
he wants to
said
make
Jews. You just said it. You always do that. We say Israel, you say Jews. We say Israel is a government. Please don't make it about Jewish Americans. And you come back and go, you have to make it about Jewish Americans. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?
Is Israel a Jewish state? Yes or no?
Yeah. First of all, okay, so Saudi Arabia is a Muslim state, and you can criticize it all day long. There's no special protection
because
for
what you're
Muslims,
doing is
Jews,
using coding
or
language
anyone that
to
calls
mock
themselves
American
a Jewish state or a
and
Muslim
to say that
state.
we should not be here and we should not be in existence, and that you would be happy for other people like Mamdani to
No,
use
I want Israel to be safe.
Nothing of the sort.
Nonsense. You're totally lying. It's very normal for a Miller to be completely and utterly lying.
Quite frankly, I'm really sick and tired of this racist, bigoted rhetoric that comes from people like you against my husband, against my family, and my children. I am raising Jewish children in this country.
Who brought your
in which
children
you
into this? What a weirdo.
Piers, I'm going to be done with this if you're going to allow racist and bigoted attacks against one of your commentators just for the sake that he will not
hang on.
speaking.
Casey, to be clear, he inserted
a line that says the Miller's lie. Is that not coded language for therefore we are Jewish?
Think about what she just said. So saying the Miller's lie is coded language for Jews lie? I mean, that was the worst delivery of that I've ever seen in my life. I mean, if you ever want an example of what's going to wake everybody up to how bad that lie is, it's right there. She just shook people awake going, whoa, what? Okay. I mean, maybe in the past I was like, okay, maybe he secretly means that, but you just exposed that even if that is the case, you throw that out on top of anything, which is what they do every single day. And I'm not saying Jews, I'm talking about Zionism, but that overlaps. If you don't know this by now, Jewish Zionism, or rather Zionist Jews and Christian, Zionist Jews and Christian Zionists. The point is that they overlap with a lot of things, but there is a very clear Zionist Jewish supremacy in that conversation. But it does not mean every Jewish person. There's plenty of Jews that call out Zionism every single day and call out what Israel's doing every single day. The point is that she just exposed the fact that people like her, in this case, a Zionist in the United States, Jewish, absolutely use that against people who are simply addressing their content, right? Their merit. Israel's government's murdering people. Oh, you hate Jewish people. Stephen Miller lies. Oh, you just said Jews lie. No, that's what they're doing. Now, I know you guys already picked that up, but I just want to accentuate how wild that was and why I'm of the mind, it is my opinion, but I think it's clear that The vast, vast majority of the world is way beyond this now. Sees it. And you can't put that back again.
Come on, Pierce. Where are you?
What? Casey, to be clear,
he inserted a line that says the Miller's lie. Is that not coded language for therefore we are Jewish? Come on, Pierce. Where are you? What? Where are you standing?
God, you're so
Casey,
pathetic.
if I can speak,
everything's your shield.
If I can speak, listen.
Fire him, cancel him, cancel him, America. Oh my God, Israel's feelings have been hurt. Why don't you work for this country?
Right, can we try and get
this country?
Yeah, you are a guest on my show, and I appreciate you coming on the show, and I like you coming on the show.
And I'm saying
but,
the two other guests on your show are welcome to participate in these anti-Semitic attacks that is so permeating on CNN and MSNBC.
This is so ridiculous. I'm sorry. I have to jump in here. Somebody criticizing you personally is not an anti-Semitic attack. If somebody says that you are lying, that is not an attack on Jews. That is an attack on you. And just stop hiding behind identity. This is all the snowflake behavior that the right is supposedly criticizing the left for.
Exactly.
So you're simply repeating here. Yes, Stephen.
And that's what we're talking about. That's what all these team sport politics, which I'm of the mind that most conservatives are very uncomfortable with because they're not stupid. They see it. They recognize the contradiction. They're just not being pointed to. And the Bennies and the Jones and all the rest are out there screaming forward along with Miller.
Miller is a destructive force in American society. That is not an attack on Jews. That is no reference to his identity. This is an attack on him individually, and just deal with the merits of this case.
Yep. Now, to be honest, guys, I mean, like always, but just to be cut to the chase of it, I don't believe that Pierce Morgan is doing this for that reason. I've said it before. I mean, he's basically turned his show into like a shouting match. It's not debate. He just lets everyone yell over each other. I think he likes the vitriol, the hatred, negativity, and it gets reach. We'll point to it for those very reasons. But when it comes down to what he's really trying to achieve, I just think it's worth questioning the intent. Not that I can know. I mean, look, I hope I'm wrong about him. I hope that what he's doing, and he is genuinely starting to see the reality of all of this. But I've seen far too many examples for me not to question these intentions. But I can't say I know for sure anybody's intentions, right? So question it for yourself. Solomon Ahmed says Stephen Miller's wife threatens to have Cenk Uygur deported after losing a debate. He's a naturalized citizen. Where do we look at these? So Ari Cohen simply says, Katie Miller, Stephen Miller's wife, leaves no doubt that this administration wants to strip people of citizenship because it doesn't like their speech. Now, you guys already got it. This is just to recenter the point on, what we're talking about, because that overlaps with Israel and the whole thing and pulls your mind away. The point is today just the citizenship overlap and the reality that they're literally using this to weaponize against their adversaries. And that's not just Miller and his wife. That's clearly this government. And even more specifically, this current administration. And we can see it on left and we can see it on right. And clearly right now, they're using this. And it says, she admits it loud and proud. This should disgust anyone who cares about free speech and American ideals. She says, you better check your citizenship application and make sure everything is correct. Because you'll just be like Ilhan Omar. I mean, it's wild to think about this, where they're trying to go after U.S. politicians. It's over the top. And I don't support any of them. No. Last part of this, which we will go into more, and we've been following as we keep up on this, is the overlap to these two stories that I just couldn't decouple to recognize where this is going. Here's Aaron Melnick pointing out, and I'll show you the article. Ryan Goodman here is reporting on an article, Democrats condemn Trump administration for secrecy on boat strikes. It says, this is the direct quote, and I'll show you from the article. 3 hops from a Trenday Rogwa member means they can kill him. This means if an unrelated friend of a cousin of your neighbor is a member of Trenday Rogwa, the Trump admin says you're fair game for a lethal strike if they think you're smuggling drugs. I'll read it to you. This is let me see if it's just direct quote. I'll read it from the article. So what they're really saying is, one, they don't even really know exactly who they're going after. If we can argue that they are connected in some way, 3 hops away was her term, then we think we can murder them in the middle of the ocean. As it says, they said that they do not need to positively identify individuals on the vessels that they strike. I mean, are you serious? See, now you're admitting that you don't even really know who they are. You're just getting intelligence. Gee, I wonder where that intelligence is coming from. And it says, Miss Jacobs and the Pentagon officials said they needed to prove only that the targeted people were connected to designated terrorist organizations. Oh, so you mean anybody? Because you can literally designate who you want, so now you have Antifa that they call a terrorist organization, which there are central parts to it, but it's pretty nebulous in the larger sense. And so now if you say that Antifa people on a boat they claim are smuggling drugs, they can murder them in the ocean. I mean, you got to realize how wild this is. And it says, even if the connection is as much as 3 hops away from a known member of a designated terrorist organization, the people who have survived the strikes have been sent to other countries and released. None have been taken into custody. Part of why they could not actually hold or try the individual that survived the attacks was because they could not satisfy the evidentiary burden. Guys, they're killing people in the middle of the ocean with nothing. And I don't think this is even about drugs, let alone even about Venezuela, other than the Venezuelan regime change, which I still don't even really think is about Maduro, Venezuela. I think it's about rare earth minerals and a larger point. I mean, and there's a much bigger thing happening here. 3 hops away. So right now they're detaining, arresting, floating all sorts of things. In other parts of the world, they're claiming, as they've just designated parts of Americans as designated terrorist organizations, and then floating the idea of claiming a foreign terrorist designation, which I promise you will be connected to Iran, Palestine, even there, despite being no connection really right there, despite support. And saying that suddenly we can have an argument that designated, meaning anything they want, connected, meaning 3 hops away, could mean anything, and we can kill them. This is the groundwork for whatever the hell is coming next. Is what I see. Stephen Miller takes leading role in the strikes on alleged Venezuelan drug boats. Now here is Glenn Greenwald speaking with Rand Paul. And Rand writes, if one president can kill anyone by decree, every president can. Anyone, even without a brain, could recognize that logic stands, right? Obviously, whoever takes power next will be able to do the same thing. That neither of them will be legal, but the precedent will have been set, meaning the left could try to do the same thing. That's very obvious. What's funny to me is after we play this clip, the way that Eric Dougherty comes out and tries to make this exact point from a Democrat into they're threatening to kill us. I mean, this is how completely broken all of this is. First, and he says no matter who's in the White House. Let's listen to Rand and Glenn Greenwald.
The problem here is that the Trump administration, and correct me if I'm wrong, is basically embracing the legal framework that has been in place since 9/11, the war on terror. I know there were efforts to try and revoke it. It was never revoked. I mean, isn't this kind of the danger illustrated that people predicted? If you don't withdraw the legal framework that allows endless war in the name of terrorism, that'll just become everything and the president can just bomb whoever he wants forever?
Yeah, and how about that, Gabbard, right? Tulsi Gabbard missed no wars forever and all the big, forever wars, and now she's all on board.
Well, I think it is important to remember our history, even our recent history back to the Obama administration. I think he killed over 1,000 people with drones. They used to have killing terrorist Tuesdays,
which he should be in prison for. Let's be very clear about that. Very much so. So if they arrest him, Obama, Comey, they should all be in prison, in my opinion. Maybe not for the reasons they're claiming, but just make sure that's clear. This is not a left-right discussion. So if Trump's doing it, he should be in prison, which he is. Same with Obama.
Where he had flashcards, and they'd go through the flashcards and pick people on the flashcards. This included an American citizen and the American citizen's 2 children. And I think nobody really made the allegation that any of them were carrying arms. They were sympathetic to terrorists. They had ideas that most civilized people disagreed with, but at the same time, they weren't in the middle of combat.
So they claimed anyway.
Or engaged in combat. But the reason it's important is because we seem to have different standards. When a Democrats in charge, Republicans, some were up in arms over this. Now that a Republican's doing it, Democrats are rightly up in arms against Trump, but some of them forget or are willing to forget that, their hero, President Obama, was doing it as well. But you're right, that legal framework and that precedent has allowed President Trump to say, look, everybody does this, they're terrorists. And it's this circular argument. Who are terrorists? Well, the people I tell you who are terrorists.
Right.
And what are terrorists? They're people who kill people in a terroristic way.
Like the U.S. government in Israel, or Obama's argument that if they're in the place we're bombing, therefore they're combatants. That's what he's pointing out. That's what Trump is doing pretty much everywhere.
And they're terrorists because I tell you they do this. It's like it's this circular argument with no proof presented. But there is a real problem with it.
Yeah, very clear. Now, here's Eric Dougherty. breaking. Look, red light, breaking. Must be super important, or just literally every post they put out every day. It says calls are now getting louder for Democrat Rep. Jim Hines to resign for seemingly threatening MAGA that a future Democrat president will use the military to kill Trump supporters because 47 is killing narco-terrorists. What a gross comment. I mean, guys, these people are just ridiculous. Like, at the end of the day, I'm of the mind that he literally knows he's just kind of contorting this in a way, and that this is kind of the flooding the zone. So do we need to point this out? Everyone should be like, Jim Hines is saying exactly what Rand Paul just said in a little bit more extensive way. It is exactly the same point. And if you listen to him, it's not like he's going, we're going to do this. He's clearly trying to say we should stop this because this could happen. I mean, it's just so lazy. But people read this and share it. I mean, literally copy that exact text and look, you'll see 7,000 people sharing identically what he says right there, each with 1 million followers. I mean, it's just insane. Almost 1 million people watched this video. No, or rather, I shouldn't even say that. Almost 1 million people look at his writing and assume what the video said in most cases, I would argue. But here's what the video said.
Terrorists. They may be drug runners. We don't know that for sure. But just because you call somebody a terrorist, we call lots of people terrorists, doesn't mean that the military is authorized to go after them. Yep. And if no other reason, and look, I talked to an awful lot of people who, despite the fact that this is illegal, are comfortable with lethal action against purported, maybe, cartel members. You know, where does it stop? Do we now start executing drug dealers on the corners of Brooklyn?
Even that first point, right? That's not that far-fetched. That's the legal precedent is a much further step when it comes to inside the U.S., but we've seen far too many war on terror practices come home. So it's not that far-fetched, and it may seem crazy now, but so too did a lot of things that are currently happening today right in front of us. And I'm not supporting this guy versus anybody. He's just whoever's saying this. I mean, is Rand Paul threatening Republicans because of what he said? It's identical to what he's saying, but this guy just adds more nuance to the point.
Where does it stop if all of a sudden the government, without telling anybody anything, can take this kind of lethal action just because they've decided that they've got the right to do so? If Lindsey Graham and other Republicans want to go the route of saying it's okay to kill people illegally, just so long as the American public supports it, the American public needs to really think that through. You know, there will be a Democratic president someday, and all my MAGA friends who are, cheering on these illegal killings need to imagine who gets killed when President Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says that it doesn't matter what the law says. She's going to do what she's going to do.
Okay, just take a second, and don't act like a child like these people, and think about his argument and the way that it's laid out. Okay. We want this to stop because it's illegal. Now, whether he does or not, again, it's Rand's point. It circles around. When they're on the other side, they pretend they're fighting the power. When they're in the power, they do the same thing. So who knows whether they mean these things or not. The point is that so he's going, stop the thing, it's bad. Okay. And then says, you must realize that, who's to stop Alexander AOC from taking power and doing what she thinks right. The point is that his premise is literally that that's why this shouldn't happen. Now, you could argue that it's a secret wink, wink. What I'm trying to do is threaten you. Sure. But that's ridiculous. There's nothing to make that case. I just think it's funny to watch how clearly this misrepresented.
Okay to kill people illegally. The American public needs to really think that through. There will be a Democratic president someday, and all my MAGA friends who are, cheering on these illegal killings need to imagine who gets killed when President Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says that it doesn't matter what the law says. She's going to do what she's going to do. So look, I work.
And at what point did that become anything other than what a nebulous threat that we haven't defined, but whatever she decides to focus on is the threat? Well, you could assume that means MAGA, right? But the point is, Trump's focusing on random people he claims are terrorists, and you can't prove that. No evidence presented. So when AOC comes into power, she'll do the same thing, which means aim at what she argues is the threat. But yeah, you could argue one of many things could be MAGA. But you see how, it feels desperate to me. It feels like you're in a rapidly kind of collapsing awareness. People are seeing through your lies, and you just need to make the case that is to the core. Democrats are going to kill us all, or whatever it is, to get people to blindly fall in place. I don't know. You could take it however you want. It's just worth pointing out. This is very, this is exactly what Rand Paul said, but you go after him like he's threatening violence, which I guarantee I've already seen at least one politician spinning it into, this is what Democrats are doing. They're all lefty maniacs. And we have, it's crazy.
here. So I understand the complete abnegation of principle and a complete thumbing of the nose at the rule of law. But I would hope that people like Lindsey Graham might not go that path, because it's a very, very dangerous path for this country to go down.
Right. So you threatened to kill me by pointing out the principle, the lack of principle in the action. You know, I mean, part of it could just be that this guy, Eric, doesn't even understand what the guy's trying to say and just goes, he said, do it, AOC. I don't know. You know, and then you look down here, you got all these Gunther Eagleman, kick him out, he's an idiot, evil. They're all just high-fiving over the thing they do, all the million followers. It just seems like a complete circle jerk. It seems fake when you really break it down. But here's Hegseth on the 29th going, we did it again, just forcing the envelope. We just murdered more people in the ship. Over and over and over, despite what's happening, despite the obvious negative attention it's getting, they double down, which seems very common for this administration. Hegseth on the 31st, that's today, blasts narco-terrorists targeted by Trump as, guess what, the Al-Qaeda of the Western Hemisphere. Who didn't see that coming? I mean, they're just going back to the oldest things possible. I can literally see like Hegseth and Noam and Bondi and Cash and Dan Bongino going, they don't buy it. Nobody's buying it. What do we do? Go back to the square one. Al-Qaeda and terrorists and war. You know, it's just like they just don't know what to do, it seems. And they're drowning right now. That's how I see this. I mean, I see conservatives laughing at them. No, the Al-Qaeda of the Western Hemisphere? You mean the Al-Qaeda that the U.S. government literally works with and funds and is letting run Syria? Or you mean the Al-Qaeda you're surrounding inside of your Yemen occupation? Or you mean the Al-Qaeda that you're working? I mean, it's just ridiculous. Or 1,000 examples. Or the ISIS-linked gangs you're working with in the middle of Gaza. The Al-Qaeda of the Western Hemisphere. So he's trying to make this into the new thing. Like these are the terrorists we need to go after, without presenting any evidence. So really nothing new, is it? And it says, these cartels are like the Al-Qaeda of the Western Hemisphere, using violence, murder, and terrorism to impose their will. What are you talking about? You guys have yet to prove a single thing other than they're boats and that you're willing to lie about it. And I mean, getting caught lying about certain factors. Whether they're terrorists is yet to be seen. Whether they're even trafficking drugs in almost every case is yet to be seen. Murder, violence, this is rapist, terrorist, drug trafficking. We're just lobbing out these things with nothing to back it up so you can try and deport someone you don't like. In this case, so you can keep murdering boats. We've yet to really see what this is exactly about. I think it's about multiple things, but I get the sense it's more than just Venezuela. The United States military will treat these organizations like the terrorists they are. Oh, again, so now you're going, oh, the cartels. Okay, have you proven this is part of something, the cartel, or that Maduro is connected to what you're saying? No. In fact, the only evidence they have that Maduro is personally connected to cartels in any way are tangential points. People that are close to him that were arrested under claims of those things, you can look it up for yourself. But this is what it's about. And it says they will be hunted and killed just like Al-Qaeda. You mean the Al-Qaeda that you guys are working with today? Whether he knows that or not is beyond me. Or is, I don't know. The point is this just is going forward regardless. Jason Bassler, 95% of MAGA summed up in 2 words, zero nuance. Now, I disagree with the 95%. I think there's far more people who are actually MAGA, make America great again, right? Who believe, or maybe just hope, I think misguidedly, that they'll do the right thing. But I think I agree that the main core seems to be blindly following in a lot of ways. And he says, Trump said it, therefore it's true. Now, you could make the same point about the core base of the Democrats, but he says no, and this is important because this is the power right now. He says no critical thinking, no concern for legality, sovereignty, collateral damage. It's a binary worldview. Good guys blow things up and bad guys get blown up. It's Stockholm Syndrome on steroids. And he points to an actual post. We've seen this in one of these, kind of meme cutouts where it's a blank white thing you can write on. And it says, I fully support the man who is blowing cartel boats out of the ocean. Right, because we know they're cartels, right? Or we know they're doing drugs or supporting drugs. No, we don't. But he's right, though. And this person says, do you? I think Sadie's a major account with millions of followers. The point is just, support? I support the guy doing the thing he says he's doing with no evidence? Guys, we just can't be this childish. It is just so much blind following. Now, this is to what we're going to end on, and this is alarming. Now, I was worried this whole time, like a lot of us were, this would genuinely become something like this. But I will say out of the gate that Miami Herald, Wall Street Journal are claiming they got reports this is the case. For all we know, they did say this, and they're trying to trick the media. They've done it before. But the point is, U.S. poised to strike military targets in Venezuela in escalation specifically against Maduro. which is exactly what I kind of thought this was about. Or really, that it would shift from the boats and go only to Venezuela, basically exposing their hand. It says the Trump administration has made the decision to attack military installations inside Venezuela, and the strikes could come at any moment. So let me know in the chat if there's news happening right now. Sources with knowledge of the situation told the Miami Herald as the U.S. prepares to initiate the next stage of its campaign against the Solis drug cartel. Right. So now it's about the Solis drug cartel by itself. And we just assume that every one of these boats, even though many of them are going to different places or didn't even aim at the U.S. government or turned around before they were killed, or, the ones that you let go that were connected to Colombia that had no criminal record and had no charges even about the boat. I mean, it's like everything else they're doing. It's not their own claims are falling apart in front of them. Their own lack of evidence, their actions or other countries' comments, like from Colombia, are proving to you that they're at the very least, lying about some factors here. The drug cartel. Now, again, don't forget the point about Maduro. You should look into it. We've talked about it in the past, the lies they've been spinning about Venezuela and Maduro in general. It's just parallel, guys. It's wild. I'd recommend Abby Martin's work if you go back to the last big push on that. It says the planned attacks, also reported by the Wall Street Journal, will seek to destroy military installations used by the drug trafficking organization, says the U.S. The U.S. says, headed by Venezuelan strongman Maduro, run by top members of his regime. Okay, so it went from drug boats bringing fentanyl, which was very quickly broken down to be a blatant lie because it was almost non-existent for Venezuela, but nobody cares about the facts in that regard. So fentanyl and immediate killing millions of Americans, even though that's blatantly untrue, even if it was fentanyl and even if it was coming in the amounts they said they were. Okay. And then it goes bomb the military installations that they use that are used by them. Okay, wait a minute. So the drug trafficking is the focal point because we're being killed by fentanyl. So bomb the military installations of Venezuela that the drug trafficking groups use. Okay, but what does that mean in regard to drugs? They use them to do what? To bomb countries? To invade? Like, this is the laziest effort I've ever seen. I shouldn't say ever, but very lazy. And does seem to back up if this is accurate reporting, what I thought would happen. They're just full blow shifting into Venezuela regime change and don't even care that you can clearly see that bombing military installations has basically no bearing on whether or not the drug, unless you're claiming they're using military installations to somehow bolster their ability to traffic drugs on skiffs into the United States. I mean, guys, this is just laughable. Sources told the Herald that the targets, which could be struck by air in a matter of days or even hours, also aim to decapitate the cartel's hierarchy. Oh, okay. So we'll bomb military installations, which will instantly shut down the cartels, which operate out of far more than just Venezuela. Got it. U.S. officials believe the cartel exports around 500 tons of cocaine yearly. Oh, we've just gone beyond the fentanyl. It doesn't matter anymore, I guess. Isn't this very Israeli Zionist-like when they just go lie and they're like fake? They go, well, okay, then this version of it. How about that one? No, we don't like that one. Okay, let's put them together. And how about those two at the same time? It's like, guys, you just got caught lying. Like, you realize that we're just shifting away, and yeah, that's what they do. That's because they have momentum, or rather the illusion of it by all the million follower accounts that blindly repeat what they say, and it's meant to present that idea. It says, while sources decline to say whether Maduro himself is a target, one of them said his time is running out, and that's what they do. He may find himself trapped and soon discover that he cannot flee. They have a $50 million bounty on his head. I mean, how is any of this even remotely legal? These people are the very terrorists, pirates they always claim they're trying to fight. But we'll have to wait and see before we go any deeper whether this is just fake reporting or whether this is them floating fake information to make them look like they're lying about them, and how, this is how it works. Mint Press News adds an interesting development in a highly unusual move. This was posted on the 30th. American military officials involved in Trump's regime change attempts in Venezuela are being required to sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. I mean, this is what's so this is interesting to me because Reuters reported this. NDAs are something that, from like a business association, and the point is you sign it because you don't want them to be able to reveal your trade secrets, your special recipe or whatever it is. But if you sign an NDA, and it turns out the recipe they're making is actually a biological weapon, whatever, or they're spiking it with illegal things. The point is, then you can go, guess what? They're breaking the law. That doesn't apply anymore. And so in this case, the reality that they're saying they're making them sign NDAs for something I mean, in what world does that not imply something that will be a problem? They don't need NDAs if they can go national security, right? Which is what they would do anyway. They're literally like double bolstering themselves because my point I'm trying to make, my impression of this, that's all it is that an NDA is something that wouldn't matter if they end up breaking the law, which is what they're doing. But I think it's there just to maybe add one more layer of them maybe just going, screw it, because Trump's going to sue me or whatever. And it says the news has sparked speculation about what President Trump is ordering U.S. operatives to do. Earlier this month, Trump publicly announced the CIA were carrying out lethal operations inside Venezuela. That's been going on a long time, but I do think it's increased with Trump recently. The point is they've been going after Venezuela left and right for a long time. Before Hugo Chavez, it says this week, Venezuelan authorities announced they had captured CIA operatives involved in carrying out a false flag attack on American personnel intended to provide justification for a war. Now, I can't verify that, but wouldn't surprise me. It says more on this from Venezuela. It says from WMDs to narco states. That's their article. How the U.S. sells wars and intelligence. Point overall here is them trying to manufacture this. But the NDA is especially interesting to me. The legal element on top of all of it, which they would know would not hold up if they were violating the law, right? So it's about trying to stifle more information, in my opinion, in ways that they are already violating. Now, the CIA agents and this whole overlap has been going on a long time, but it wouldn't surprise me if they're right now trying to lay that stage or set the stage. And they also point out that in that article, they've got multiple generals ready to turn. You know how that went last time? It was very embarrassing for Trump's administration when they had this whole thing planned out and it turned out the people were lying to them and they were ready to execute the operation and it went wrong and they didn't get to do it because the generals turned out to be on Maduro's side. I mean, maybe it's different now. I don't know why it would be. So I think they're stating that like last time to get people in there to think, oh my God, it's all going to come down. I better turn and help the U.S. Historically, though, it does not go their way. Now, last 2 points. Here's even Tucker Carlson. And this is RT reporting saying Maduro bans gay marriage, abortion, and sex changes. But his U.S.-supported replacement wants to legalize them. Now, listen up, Republicans who support this, because Trump says there's a contradiction here. Now, whether or not you think you should support or not gay marriage and abortion, the point is from the left-right conversation, it's pretty clear where those things line up. So then why is the Republican side supporting the side that does not, or rather that does support them? Well, Maduro does not. You see, it's just like them telling you, vote for Cuomo, vote for the lifelong Democrat operative because the other side doesn't like Israel. What it shows you is it's always about Israel in that case, but the agenda, they're not really fighting for what you think they are, is the point. Now, whether Tucker's changing and suddenly seeing it or not, I hope so. He's been calling a lot of things out. He's getting a lot of hate for it, or it's just set up for something in the future. I'll always question that. Nonetheless, supporting what he's saying now.
So the question is why? Why are we doing this? Why are we so opposed to Nicolas Maduro? So if you ask someone on the street, random person, why are we against Nicolas Maduro? The answer you're going to get is, who's Nicolas Maduro? But if you find someone in South Florida, for example, who knows who Nicolas Maduro is, who can identify where Venezuela is on a map, that person will almost certainly say, well, because he's a communist or a socialist, he's exceedingly left-wing, and that is true. Nicolas Maduro and his government are very left-wing.
Now, but I always argue that it's a very deceiving thing to try to place the American left-right paradigm on top of anything else. And that goes for any country for that matter. It's very manipulative today, what you might call left-wing, right-wing in the context of even the U.S. having flip-flopped in many ways over the years. So just keep that in mind. Now, I don't necessarily disagree. I just think that it's very different from somebody trapped in the left-right paradigm in this country to project, what they might think that means on what he's doing. And you look at what he's doing and realize it's far more in the center of what that might mean from a left-right American perspective. Either way, it's not Americans' decision to decide what type of government Venezuelans have.
Economics, not exceedingly left-wing, and that is true. Nicolas Maduro and his government are very left-wing on economics. Not on social policy, by the way, which is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
In Venezuela, gay marriage is banned, abortion is banned, sex changes for transgenderism are banned. It's one of the very few countries in the entire hemisphere with those policies. It is on social policy, not defending the regime, just saying, one of the most conservative countries in North or South or Central America.
I hate the not trying to defend the regime. I hate that. You know, I mean, it's that is a sort of like appealing still to the mainstream conversation, right? It's no more a regime than any other government we're talking about. And on top of that, they lie about this more than anybody else. And if you compare a fraction of what Israel or the US have done in the last 5 years alone, and compare that to everything they claim Maduro is doing, it doesn't even come close. So let's just be honest about this. Now, I don't support any government, any of them. And I would argue that Maduro or anybody else I don't want any of them, but all of them can centralize to controlling your life, which we're seeing in this country now. Just to point that out, though, you know, like this, if you're going to call it regime, you damn well better call Israel or the United States a regime, because it's far more that in every sense.
Only El Salvador really comes close, which is much smaller.
In case you missed his last point there, he's simply saying he's far more conservative in ways that people don't want you to recognize.
In North or South or Central America, only El Salvador really comes close, which is much smaller, of course. And by the way, the U.S.-backed opposition leader who would take Maduro's place if he were taken out is, of course, pretty eager to get gay marriage in Venezuela. So to those of you who thought this whole project was globo homo, not crazy, actually.
Isn't that interesting? Now, the last point, you can take it for what you will. The bottom line is that this is contradictory in every possible way to what the right thinks they're fighting for. It just, what it shows you is that if you're honest and have principles, that you go, wait a minute. But if you're just Team Trump, whatever he says, I'm going to go, yay, best thing in the world, then, you know, that's a very clear chasm between those two things. Call it out. But very interesting, isn't it? And what I think is that, you know, not just overlap, him doing that, like the idea of this is just so, there's so much more going on than just left-right politics in every possible sense. Like this is trying to manufacture the argument they think might resonate with Republicans, but it's just contradicting. Oh, and the other point to remember too, well, all I was going to say is that it's, as always, using political ploys to get you in a certain position. Let's not forget that Machado, the person that they're trying to push in, was the one who wrote a letter to Netanyahu and said, please, like literally, regime change this country. That's wrote a letter that was publicly put out. Is that, and she wants them to overthrow the country and let Israel, of all places, do so. And on top of that, she supports all the things that are challenging. I mean, it's insulting. And I'm glad he's calling it out. Now, lastly, another clip from Rand Paul with same conversation with Glenn. He says, we don't need another regime change adventure dressed up as America First. This is why they hate them. Whether he's doing this because he believes it or not, you can decide. Calling that out from a clearly principled America First person in the context of what they're doing makes them look really bad. Massey and Rand Paul, good for them. They've leaned into it. Well, you know, and you can decide the intention, what you think they mean, but you have to support this right now, in my opinion, because it is the right stance. It's the principled stance. What they're doing is a crime. And in no way is it in the interest of America, let alone America First. It's important we call this out. He says toppling governments abroad doesn't make us stronger. It drains us and risks American lives. Let's rebuild our own country, not someone else's. I mean, really think about this for a second and think about where it's all going. We'll play that on the way out. What they're building, what they're aiming at, the foreign government involvement. I mean, it's just the examples are never ending right now. And what I'm always calling for is, regardless of what political side you think you're on, not to say that you don't have political stances. People are conservative. They are liberal, right? That exists. But the game of the government, they don't care. They will use what they need to get you in the position that they need you in order to take what they want. That's what they do. Anywhere, in my opinion, right? So what we need to recognize is, first, that's the reality, and stop pretending like one of the other are on your side. Like, even if they are actually on your side, it is still so wildly in your interest to never assume that, to always question their intentions and always hold their feet to the fire, as anybody honest would demand of you. Think about that. So call them out. Right? And recognize where this is going and aimed at Americans, and whether the people that are currently in our power structure are very much working for something that is not in the interest of the United States, if not for a foreign power. And just the simple, very clear points, in case you don't care about any of that. We have our government conducting criminal activity, violating rights, detaining American citizens. Now, I don't know why that would not matter to anybody, let alone people who scream about the Constitution, myself included. These are people's rights, U.S. citizens, who are being violated. I mean, at the very least, we should be demanding accountability for those examples, let alone all the other ones we can see, while they come up and literally lie to your face and say it's not happening. No American citizens, no detained, no deportation, no, all of it. Not happening. Fake news. And then you can see that they're lying to you. Has to be one of those moments where we recognize what's really going on. I just thought it was important to lay this out in a way that people can see that this is coming home. It's already home. And what's happening with Venezuela seems to be a tipping point, right? Where at one point, I mean, this is going to overlap. I think it always kind of has been aiming that way, like the vanilla ISIS kind of game. And it's just an effort to get this to fully come together for, I could give you plenty of my opinions, but it aims in the direction of less control in your life. Every single one of these agendas, the solution usually comes down to something that is restricting your rights. What you can say, what you can think, what you're allowed to go, how long you can go there. Always. From COVID-19 to everything in between to what's currently happening with the genocide to what they're doing in your country right now. Just implore you to at least consider what we're saying. And if you recognize the risk, the problem, left or right, or aware of the reality of the lie, stand up and just do your best to get this in front of people who need to see it in a calm, rational way, right? Lay it out. They yell, come back later, water the seed, right? You just got to plant the seed. You got to bring it back. You got to continue to water it and show people that there is facts to back it up. And eventually people will come around. I have faith in that. I've watched it my entire career. So continue to fight, guys. Support this, what we're doing. Anybody out there trying to call it out, give them a share. If you believe what we're doing, let us know what it means to you. I love you all. As always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
It does seem like this runs contrary to Trump's natural instincts. He's an America First candidate, wants to spend resources on our country, building up our communities. Instead, we're now going to go do a regime change war in Venezuela. What do you think is the dynamic driving President Trump and why so many people in Washington seem on board with this?
You know, bad advice is the simple answer. In the first administration, I did everything I could to stop John Bolton from being Secretary of State. I was successful in that, but then they still brought him in and made him a national security advisor that didn't have to be approved by the Senate. But I told him from the beginning that he was going to institute his own policy. And maybe one of the dumbest things a diplomat or a foreign policy advisor has ever said was when Trump was speaking with Kim Jong-un and North Korea, and they had a summit. He said, "Well, just explain to him that we're going to be for the Libyan solution." And I'm like, well, the Libyan solution is you trade in your nukes and we kill you anyway. That's not something really we should probably broadcast to people we're trying to get rid of their nuclear weapons that, oh yeah, we'll give you the solution we gave to Gaddafi. No, he was a menace. And I think there are some of those in this administration that share John Bolton's worldview more than they share the president's. But the thing is on a day-to-day basis, it's a matter of trying to appear to accept the president's worldview and then undermine it as much as you possibly can. In this case, though, I think they've influenced him. And they just made him think that, oh, well, it's our hemisphere. We're going to have the Trumpian hemisphere, and you can do whatever you want over here, and it won't be as bad as Iraq because these people are closer to us, and those drugs are just 2,000 miles off our coast.